Now, what you described as how there's effectively a 0% threshold is just completely wrong. How it's just by default the entire network already accepts 110. No, that's not correct. And then so far, this is really paining me, because like, how can you ask the entire network to go along with a bluff that has no solution, a temporary bluff that has no solution? You're literally asking, core devs for review of your code only weeks before activation, and then asking everybody to go along with your temporary thing where there's no solution in sight. So that's my question, and I just want to answer your other question too, Portland, where if BIP-110 does succeed, then that means that Bitcoin consensus can be changed by loud people on Twitter. And that means that Bitcoin is not what I thought it was. And I would probably,
that's why I was going to be upset.
Same thing. I'd be upset as well. Like Bitcoin is not as hard money as I thought it was. It's just PayPal that can be changed on the whim with some loud people on Twitter, because if they can be changed by Twitter people, they can be changed by regulators for sure. So,
it's not ready for a nation state.
Absolutely not ready for the nation state. So the question is again, Mechanic, how can you ask the entire network to go along with a bluff that has no solution?
Right, thanks. So to be clear, I didn't say that you were characterizing all of the nodes on my side as a Sybil attack. That's a straw man of ultimately your own position. I'm just saying you called it a Sybil attack. I don't know the degree to which you assert that. I also do think it's quite plain to see that it is somewhat genuine. You can see a consistent drop in the core nodes starting around April 2025. A Sybil attack that simultaneously switches off from the other implementation is quite, I'm pretty incredulous about that being a possibility. That would be years in the making to do something like that. So I did post a thread on it a couple of days ago where I'm saying, here are the numbers. Am I bullshitting myself? Am I just getting fake confidence from a Sybil attack? I don't think so. There was a Sybil attacker. He declared his attack and he stopped it. And that also helps further, because if someone else was Sybil attacking, when he turned his attack off, the guy who was Sybil attacking to give us all false confidence should have joined forces with him and turned off at the same time and completely scuttled the whole movement. If there's a Sybil attack going on right now, at least from the antagonist side that's against BIP-110, they must be waiting until the moment before it activates. But I do think it's a mistake. If I really wanted to give a side fake confidence and I spun up Sybil nodes, I know that it would be counter to my purpose, because all I would do is give them false confidence, and that would translate into real confidence, as other people would think, oh, this is a trend and I need to be a part of it. Because a lot of people are just following trends, and you don't want to create the appearance of a successful trend. Most of the energy has been around making it look like a terrible idea and to attack it viciously to make sure that it can't be accepted or tolerated or discussed. That's why you can't mention it on Reddit and places and a few other places without getting immediately banned from discussing it. It's because they don't want to make it look like a success fake with fake numbers. They want to make it look like an absolute failure and loser of a movement, which is, pretty despicable, but I don't need to go into details about that. So let me address the other things you said. The point about, the network accepting BIP-110 blocks by default, and that being a soft fork thing, I think is kind of a technicality. We can get into semantics if you like, but that's kind of the point. That's all of it being a soft fork rather than a hard fork. If it was a hard fork, then we wouldn't have any of that inertia, right? And as Portland said, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he was saying if it was successful, he wouldn't need to do anything of note with his core node. It will just carry on having a bunch of blocks that for some reason didn't have op-ifs in Taproot or big op returns. And that's probably true. And that is ultimately why you can have minority soft forks. Then you said it doesn't actually have a solution. I think it's the solution in and of itself, even if it's only temporary. Just saying you can't have big op returns and you can't do the inscriptions hack anymore is the purpose of the BIP. And I am fine with it doing that. That is the solution to what we believe Core 30 stated. It's the reverse statement. It's saying, yes, we know you could always have op returns before this, but now they are somehow officially sanctioned because the reference implementation blew it up from 83 all the way up to 100,000.
But consensus rule has always been 1 megabyte.
Do you mind? Let me just finish addressing Vortex point. So that's my response to the no solution thing. It's not a solution to spam, in case that's, but it says that in the BIP. It does not solve spam. There are going to be, the day that this thing activates is the day that people are going to include loads of new novel ways of adding arbitrary data to Bitcoin. I get it. Have at it. BIP-110 does not stop all methods of arbitrary data insertion. And your final point, Vortex, that I think is the most shameful, is the assertion that it's just loudmouths on Twitter. You can be loud on Twitter. The difference is if you're actually right and you have a point, then other people listen to you and they act upon the logic in which you are rationalizing what it is you are going on about. They find you reasonable and they agree with what you're saying. We are not bullying people into running BIP-110 nodes, though I get there's a lot of energy and people yelling and calling each other names and stuff.
Statham's post was pretty strongly worded.
Yeah.
Attention,
I agree with that. But I'm saying ultimately, if you're out here on social media loudly advocating for something and people go along with it, they are adults. They are capable of assessing the things we say. And if we're, full of nonsense and it's just a pure populist movement with no technical basis or sound rationale whatsoever, sure, you can think that, but I don't think those people have come to that conclusion. I know people that thought about this for over a year and were like, okay, I actually think you're right about this. That's not because I yelled on Twitter, and it's a disservice to say that, because ultimately it's just a discredit to Bitcoiners. It's an insult to the people that actually keep the network decentralized. You can't have this like tight-knit group of super cliquey developers that just know what's best and do what they think is right. Because that has an issue.
They do what's best for their own implementation, right? Not for the protocol. It's the implementation that they're the authors of.
Yeah,
we're not talking about consensus rules, right? We're talking about policy right here. And Luke changes policy whenever he feels like changing policy. Whenever he feels it's right to change the policy, he does it.
I'm just making the point that saying it's consensus by loud people on Twitter is that ignores the content of what people
I understand what you're
saying.
saying, but what my problem is most people have no idea the difference between consensus rules and policy and what actually needs user input and what doesn't.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to point out that I think it's important to remember that from first principles, Bitcoin has a culture. It is a voluntary upgrade. You decide what node you run, right? Like it's not like it's being like forced.
100%.
So like
that's how it should be.
That's how it should be, right? And so I think it's important just to remember that we all have agency in this matter. We should be doing the work to learn about it and make an informed decision, and don't trust, verify. That's just one thing I just want to make sure that we're
right. So are we all on the same page that consensus rules needs actual consensus from the wider quote unquote ecosystem, but policy, the authors of that implementations get to decide what's best for their policy. Like they don't need user input for that.
I'm sorry. Before I let Mechanic respond to that, I just want to clarify on the language that you used, Mr. Hoddle. When you say the word policy, what is that in reference to?
Policy, like literally policy.
Relay policy, I assume.
Mental policy, you could have, there's plenty of it, but any policy. They could change the dust limit for, like, that's not a consensus rule. That's policy.
That's relay policy, correct. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're using the same vocabulary.
I mean, that's the crux of all this. Mechanic wants you to think that you need consensus for policy, but that's never been the case.
The Wicked Smart Bitcoin has been making the case that like there are super relays on the network that bypass relay policy, and that has always been the criticism.
It's bypasses Bitcoin's core relay policy, but not consensus rules.
Can I try to answer this?
Hold on. Do you mind if I just address that specific claim? I'm not saying that they needed consensus to change policy. I'm saying that they don't need consensus to do that, and we don't need consensus to do BIP-110. I think
so. Why? No one.
Useless term in this space.
I don't think anyone's telling you to stop running BIP-110.
No, people aren't telling me overtly to stop it, but their actions.
Oh,
show me that they have a
covertly they're
big
telling you to
problem
stop it?
with doing
Well, look.
No, we're telling you that it's gonna. No, we're telling you. Well, most people are telling you is that it's going to be a stillborn
Here's what's
altcoin.
crazy. If you run, here's what's crazy. Mechanic said that people
slow
are
down.
agreeing with logic on X. You know, it's they're agreeing with the 110 side is agreeing with logic, that there's logic, and then they're all just standing, they're all agreeing with it, but they're not, because they have no refutations to the technical objections, to the many people that are you know, putting forth these objections. They are getting nothing response except for Luke saying that they like CSAM because they don't agree with Luke.
Again,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
This
don't.
is an unfair characterization of the ability of people that aren't on your side to reason.
It's
There
just
are
this is objective.
Yeah, but I mean, who
Objective
cares?
looking at-
Vortex, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, if people believe that this is how Bitcoin should be, but fine, by all means. But what I'm trying to say is that it's going to be a stillborn altcoin. Like, I don't think you're going to want to maintain a minority fork. I think it's going to be like just no news on that day. I think
That's
it's
my
going to.
question right there. Mechanic, what is the plan to
There
support
is no point. There is no plan. They're not trying.
We know there's no plan, but
He has responded. He has responded many times. He's not. They're not in this to make an
I
altcoin.
understand.
That's not what they're.
So the plan is just let BIP-110 die if it does not get hash rate to continue the chain onwards.
That's the plan.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Mechanic, go ahead, respond, and then I want to hear Wicked.
There's a little bit too much going on for me to know what exactly to respond to. I just want to. I guess I'll double down on that point about consensus. I think that I'm not saying that anyone, Mr. Hoddle, I'm not saying that anyone has told me that I'm not allowed to run BIP-110 or something like that. That's not the point. I'm saying that a complaint has been that we went ahead and did this without consensus.
Without technical consensus.
No, I don't know. I'm okay. Maybe some people will be upset with that.
To your credit, I don't think you think that. You've never said this.
I personally don't have a problem. I mean, maybe some people have a problem with that. I don't. My problem, honestly, the only one was the 55% threshold. I think if you had it at 85%, and then if that didn't work out, you did a UASF, and if you somehow had economic notes to force these miners into mining, then so be it. But doing it at 55%, if by any chance this gets activated, not by UASF, but by 55%, that's not a good thing. That becomes a really big mess. And if you really want a successful fork, the reason you have majority hash rate is so then it doesn't become a mess. So my only thought process behind why you would do something like this is because you probably knew that you were going to get 55% anyway. I know you saying that you don't want Wang Chun to prevent you from getting BIP-110, but again, pools don't control hash rate, right? Hash rate come and go. If Wang Chun decides to do something that the hash rate doesn't like, the hash rate leaves the pool. That's not, they can't force people that are pointing hash rates to there to like deny them what they want. So I don't buy that argument. So setting it at 55% was my big main issue. The UASF part, honestly, if somehow you have the economic majority that wants to remove op returns, highly unlikely. But if you do that and it succeeds, then by all means. But setting it at 55% is an evil soft fork attempt. That's the way I view it. I view it as an evil soft fork attempt. If you did it honestly, I wouldn't care.
At risk.
Yep,
it's a huge risk. If it doesn't activate by 55%, say it does go to UASF, and all of a sudden, just like in 2017 when we went from 10% signaling to 100% signaling with BIP-91, if that happens, then sure, it's a safe fork. But setting it at 55% threshold, I don't know, man. Sounds very fishy to me. It looks like an attack to me. It looks like an evil soft fork attempt.
I know it looks like that, but it is not that. It looks like that if you don't pay attention to the context it exists in, and the fact that it goes ahead with 0% because of how it's designed. It's a UASF by design, which says outright from the beginning, if not a single miner in the world mines a single block signaling for this thing, we are still going to activate it. That's the truth of it. So 55%, as I said before, it's arbitrary and somewhat meaningless. As I said, coming at it from you guys' perspective, if it gets 55%, I don't expect any of you to suddenly roll over and say, oh, well, this thing I was really against, because 2 mining pools are in favor of it now, I will accept. Because at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. All that miner activation and version bit flipping does is coordinate stuff. It doesn't tell you whether the community actually approves or rejects a thing. It's useless as a proxy for figuring out what consensus actually is.
Or even if the miner is enforcing the rules, they can just set it to whatever they want.
That's kind of that's the main issue. I mean, if you coerce 2 pools, say you coerce Foundry and Morrow or someone else, you got you're pretty close to 55% right there.
Right, and I don't think you should accept it on that basis. You would need to say, well, is there any actual community support for this thing, or is it totally like a regulator going to
why
mining
set it?
pools
So why
saying,
set it to?
Yeah.
So why set it so low? Why set it to 55% originally? Then what's the point of that then?
Because it's not particularly meaningful wherever it is.
If it's not meaningful, if you don't think that number is meaningful,
there's a difference between it activating at 55% with the miner activation and then it activating a year later because the miners didn't signal via user activated, even if it was 55% either way. Right.
Yeah,
And
like
if you give the miners an entire year, 55%, and then you have the users kind of rush it through at the end.
We've already gone through a time period where they could have activated it.
Well, but I'm saying 55%. Like, imagine if it had activated earlier on, right away at 55%. That would have been pretty controversial, don't you think? You would split the chain.
It really becomes, that's literally
and
how
you'd have a bunch of miners who probably hadn't even heard about it yet.
Can I ask people to just?
It's just like as a coordination method, that threshold is pretty irresponsible. Is all we're saying. That's it.
I mean, it's a fair point, and I'm glad that people voiced it.
I mean, I'm bringing up that point since the beginning, like from moment one. Like I saw 55%. I couldn't believe no one else was talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that too, and it was a bit of a sticker shock.
From the same people that complained about the 90% activation threshold of a Taproot.
Yeah, well, I mean, 90% was a reduction, right? From
no,
massive.
Wait, can I respond to that, Hunter?
Okay,
I don't
absolutely.
I didn't complain about the 90%
before,
threshold of that.
I just ask that people just kind of let people speak and not jump in, and please just raise your hand and wait your turn. Thank you.
Can I go?
Thanks. Like, I'll promise what people are saying. I'd like to write it down so I don't have to keep jumping in down their throat every time they say something, and then I can just address each point in a list, and then like everyone listening can actually get something from the conversation. So I'm really trying to discipline myself and not cut people off, and I appreciate it if anyone else wants to take that approach too.
I didn't mean to generalize all people that complained about the 90% activation threshold of Taproot to all the people that support BIP-110. I just noticed there is a correlation with quite a few people that had an argument of like why Taproot was malicious, now kind of very much so in favor of a 55% threshold that is quite a bit lower than the thing they were making statements about. That is all.
Can I ask to elaborate?
Sure.
My problem, speaking for myself with Taproot activation, wasn't that it was any particular percentage. It was that it was lot false with Speedy Trial, meaning it put the miners in a position where they literally
bullshit. I agree with Mechanic there. Taproot was a bullshit way of activating it, and I was against the way it activated.
Yeah, it wasn't the number, it was whether lock-in on timeout was true or false, because I thought the whole point of the SegWit fork wars was we don't ask
the problem, the thing is, though, is that there was really no pushback at all from anyone with Taproot. Nothing, nowhere. Not on Twitter, not technically, not on Reddit. There was zero pushback. So it activated because it wasn't contentious. I mean, that's pretty much... That's why.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, I don't think there was any pushback. There was one guy that was upset that it wasn't a quantum safe address type.
Yeah, that was probably me. I was saying that it was a quantum safe. I even made a poll: should every upgrade from this point be quantum safe? Like during that time,
I do remember Trace Mayer saying that he doesn't like Taproot because it's too private.
Yeah, but there's no one really pushing back on Taproot. So that's why it activated with the Speedy Trial. If something had any contentious, it wouldn't have activated with Speedy Trial.
Like CTV.
Yeah, there you go. CTV, perfect example.
Well, CTV, I remember there being a lot of ad hominem attacks on Jeremy Rubin at the time, and like a lot of people using essentially like what I think is fair to say anti-Semitic rhetoric against his contributions, which I think are fair to point out that are pretty dishonest and unfortunate that it was framed that way.
It's wild because he modified CTV multiple times based on feedback.
Yeah.
Based on
he did it. He released it every single way you wanted it to be released. He gave a UASF client.
Yes.
He gave a BIP-8 client. He made a BIP-9 client. He literally gave you every type of way to activate it. Unfortunately for Jeremy, he charged his name even before that. So I think that's kind of what hurt CTV the most. If he released CTV with a NIM, it probably would have been adopted much faster.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit, by the way, when you were speaking, Mr. Hoddle. Can you explain once again, just like clearly, why you think Jeremy Rubin failed despite all
Jeremy had some really bad advice. So when Binance got hacked, Jeremy was basically, he's going to say he was probably trolling, but it wasn't a troll. He was trying to coordinate. He was basically telling CZ that it would be probably profitable if he coordinated a reorg to get those 4 coins back. And he was like basically willing to help him do that.
Oh, so you're saying that Jeremy Rubin proved the haters calling him untrustworthy, they gave them like sort of ammunition because he gave CZ bad advice in jest, or is that?
I mean, he was telling CZ to reorg Bitcoin's blockchain to get his hacked coins back.
But was he serious?
It was like $40 million.
I think he just said, like CZ said, we're looking into doing a rollback, and Jeremy responded, "Hey, I can help you with this if you need." I think that's how it happened.
No. Jeremy was the one that suggested to CZ he should do this.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's obviously a faux pas.
That's not great.
It doesn't make CTV good or bad. I think the main reason CTV
obviously, forget the
just
To be
honest, I think I'm curious what Vortex's opinion is on why CTV never really made any progress in the sort of with the inner circle of Bitcoin Core.
Yeah, I would. Well, I'm not in any type of inner circles, that's for sure, especially not Bitcoin Core. I do read the mailing list, IRC, and Delving though. But as far as why CTV didn't get activated yet, a big part of it, in my opinion, was the conversation was derailed by the spam conversation.
I can't remember exactly what we're still talking about, but I always think the turns thing is a little funny. Reminds me of
we were getting real progress, dude, with CTV. People were really having discussions about it and doing tests and doing various different experiments and things. And then the spam discussion started and completely took it over.
I think there's a secondary component as well. The number of fragments that became of CTV, APO, the whole thing got derailed into 10 different pet projects that never unified into solving it. And the second thing
including a project from Core. So it's like,
sure, I'm just saying, there's tons of these projects, but nobody ever unified around this is the solution. We're gonna forming consensus.
And then while we were doing that, then the spam came. Yep.
The good news, everyone, is that soon enough we'll all be able to activate any soft fork we want if we just have enough users.
You just need 55%.
You have to have enough people.
It doesn't need to actually be a good idea. You just have to be loud on Twitter. That's all that's required.
What if it's just
straight from the marketing king himself?
Workable, maybe.
Good stuff, guys.
So
it's kind of funny.
I have a real question for Mechanic, and I appreciate the level tone that we're all keeping here. My real question is, if your idea around consensus doesn't prove to be true, meaning small minorities of users can't change Bitcoin's rules easily, how will you rationalize that after the fact? Have you thought about if it's not true and what the reasoning for that could be yet? Or are you just kind of waiting to see what happens, and then if it ends up not being true, you'll think about it then?
Thanks for the question. I don't think you actually understand my position.
He doesn't, because I can I answer for you, because I'm pretty sure I already understand your
Mr.
position.
Hoddle, I want to hear mechanic answer.
All right.
I'll have a go, and you can give the proper answer about what I think after. Thanks.
Dumb it down for me maybe later.
So I believe, based on what happened in 2017, that a minority-activated soft fork is a possibility in Bitcoin. I believe it based on that. I don't know what the threshold is of users that need to actually be enforcing it, or it's not whatever it is you need to use as a heuristic for figuring out whether it's past some sort of threshold for credulity. If BIP-110 doesn't prevail, then whatever we had was not big enough in comparison to whatever there was with BIP-148. That would just serve as a second data point for how you can and how you can fail to change Bitcoin with minority soft forks. That's basically it. And my response is, what happens, again, I get asked a lot about what I'm going to do in failure scenarios. And I've basically just said, I don't really know. I'm just going to add it to my data points. But I hear basically never any response from the side against BIP-110, what is going to actually happen upon success, because I don't know what Bitcoin Core do in that scenario, because they're not enforcing all the network rules anymore, and it would be risky for miners to run their stuff. And a big mining pool running something other than Core is a massive deal that can't be done, quickly. And I don't know.
I mean, Core's already lost their grip on mining pools to a degree. A lot of the F2 was using Libra, Slipstream.
They've been doing custom software as long as I can remember. No one runs vanilla Bitcoin Core as a mining pool.
Those are based on their own modifications, not like a public. If it would be core derived or core based with their own.
Yeah, I mean, so is Knots.
So is Knots.
Knots is core derived.
Knots is not there.
I was going to say that.
I agree, but Knots is not. Foundry isn't. Foundry making a Foundry modified core is not the same as Foundry using Knots. That's not the same thing.
So it's very similar.
It's Luke reviewed code instead of just the Foundry
it's just
guy.
Their version of nobody. This is man, dude. Come on, an implementation is not the protocol. It speaks to the protocol.
Okay, Mechanic, is there any consequence for anybody running 110 right now? Or is it what's on the line for people if they're wrong? That's my, because I can see from the core side, if for anybody running core right now, a miner, there's a lot on the line because of the fact that they'll orphan off blocks, they will waste energy. There could be reorg transactions. What's the consequence for being wrong on the 110 side? If it truly, I think it's quite a minority right now.
It's still the miners who have the consequence if they get it wrong, and they're hashing on that side.
But the users don't. Is there any?
The users do. Users have a consequences if they plan on sticking with that chain. If they're willing to tell their customers that are that they're validating Bitcoin for, that they're going to be on a different chain than the legacy chain. But they have to want to continue on. Like they have to want to compete against Bitcoin because they would think Bitcoin is broken if. Like in 2017, Bitcoin was broken. I mean, it was every other block was empty. We had covert ASIC boost. So we had pools that were just the spam attack. It was bad. We weren't getting malleability fixed anytime soon. Everybody wanted Lightning. Those were bad times. So there was a group of people that were ready to become a minority chain, and what the thought process there. What the thought process there was that we knew that some Bitcoin core developers were running BIP-148 nodes, and we knew right out the gate Slush Pool was signaling for SegWit, and that was about 20% of the hash power right there. So we figured if at least 20% comes on board, eventually the economics will flow onto that chain, and that would become the majority chain, and then eventually will wipe out the legacy chain. That was the idea. But we were ready to split off.
Well, we were ready to lose all of our Bitcoin. We were ready for Bitcoin to go to.
I was ready. That was the risk. That was 2x wasn't scary. BIP-148 was scary because I had to tell people that were connected to my node. I had family members that were connected to my node, and I would have to tell them that you guys are now going to be getting BIP-148 Bitcoin, not legacy Bitcoin. Yep. That's a huge that was the risk.
Why wouldn't the keys just work on either chain?
No, the keys. So there's
you have to pick a chain when you buy new Bitcoin.
When you buy
You
it,
would get
what is that
in that
supposed to
scenario.
mean?
If there's a split, you would have to add replay protection on the minority fork to make it safe, so you don't get
But
replayed on both
I
sides.
guess I'm concerned on on one hand at 1 through 4, but I'm only gonna get to like 2, I guess. I'm concerned about the problem because it doesn't make sense that you're gonna say it's
Is this
going.
Carter? Is
Huh?
this Aaron Carter?
No, this is somebody else. I'm like concerned
Nick
that.
Carter. Did I say Aaron Carter? It sounded like Nick Carter, dude.
Am
All
I
right, go.
talking? Hello? Can you hear me? So then, okay, you brought up like much earlier, the Satoshi thing. Like he only intervened whenever
This
they
is
wanted to
fucking
make
Nick
it like
Carter.
8 blocks or however many megabytes, so the block limit. So you're concerned about that and something about changing
No, it's not. He's following me. He's not Nick Carter.
the signing script.
Yeah, I know what he sounds like. That's not.
Sorry,
So-
what did you say? I missed everything you said. What did you say?
Well, we're trying to get around this quantum thing and the thing about the ordinals and also the inscriptions.
Oh, that's not my topic.
Oh, well, that's
Can I
what we're
answer
talking
what
about.
Portland said?
What?
Portland, you said like, the risks to users. I think it's
Yeah, like what's on the line for 110 users like right now? Is it like to me, looking from an external viewpoint, you have 0.4% of hash rate as energy that would get wasted if they did not switch back over. And then I don't know of any economic actors that have any skin in the game. A Coinbase being wrong about 110 is a massive problem. Am I making any sense here or
yeah,
not?
yeah, exactly. I agree. For exchanges and miners, it's of the largest consequence what happens there. I think exchanges are probably the worst hit because that's
Double spends.
And miners are actually not as bad because there's the 100 block cooldown before they can do anything anyway. So there's kind of built into mining in the first place is the fact that your chain has to be very, very, very established, or at least 100 blocks established before you can actually move anything. So, but nonetheless, FPPS pools, even if there's like this is why I think if a 10 to 20% threshold is hit with them, it still would probably win because the other side, for a bunch of reasons, is not going to trust amongst themselves that no one defects. And I don't want to get into the asymmetry of it again, but the fact that the 100 block cooldown for an FPPS pool suddenly drops to 80% of what it is that they can get out of the chain, it's no longer a 17-hour wait for an 100 block cooldown. It's a 26-hour wait or something. That's going to hit very hard very quickly. And if there's ambiguity around moving money around, I don't know, that to me, by comparison with like a Start9 hodler that maybe has a lightning node or something that basically is in Bitcoin to hodl, that's about the majority of what they do. They can hold out for months. So like it or hate it, it's basically a big advantage to people that can run those nodes and cross their arms. The miners and exchanges are ultimately the ones that need stability much more. I think there's been a bit of question around the stability of lightning channels, and like an LSP is another entity
Correct.
that needs things to resolve very quickly as well.
When you say they can wait it out for months, do you mean like stop buying Bitcoin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the whole thing. Like hodling Bitcoin, you're hodling on both sides of the chain. That's not what you need. You need demand on that chain.
Yeah,
like that's how you reject blocks. Hodling Bitcoin doesn't reject blocks.
Is the point, even if the block isn't
No,
relevant to anything
no,
you're
dude,
doing,
no.
it
You have to
doesn't.
accept a payment in order to reject a block. What do you mean if you have a node, you can?
Well, I'm wondering then if that's the case, the whole concern later on about like a quantum attack on Satoshi's wallets, I'm sure is just as ridiculous. Like, who brought that stupid idea up? If this thing doesn't make sense, imagine that. That would be ridiculous, because why would you be worried about that? And I'm sure like something better will have come along than a quantum computer in like 70 or 80 years.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to drop off. I really appreciate the pleasant conversation. And,
Oh man, we were just getting to the good part.
Yeah,
we were getting to the economic nodes and what they do. Like that's where this was headed right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate
thanks,
it.
Paul. Do appreciate it.
Please,
I'm
all
just saying,
right, mechanic. See you later.
Well, to close the loop on that topic, I'm just saying it varies by degree. I'm not saying that a hodler trying to withdraw bitcoins from an exchange on a node that is finding one block a week or something like that is going to be having a great time with it. I think it would be more likely that I don't know, that if it really is persisting in a minority state and the majority isn't capitulating,
What
and is
what
continuing to
exchange?
ignore it.
What exchange would they use? Has there been any exchanges that have said they'd support a minority fork?
They would only support. This was already clear from back then. In order for an exchange to support a fork, they need to add replay protection, which is a hard fork.
When they have
Well, they
P2P
can
exchange
do
too,
things manually.
just on top of all that for free.
Actually, exchanges have an incentive in fork scenarios to just try and make money off of.
They want two sides of the chains. They want you to add that replay protection. They don't want to list another coin that could be replayed against. Like, they're not going to risk that. But if you add replay protection, 100%.
Sorry to jump in, but
they can do that. But that's you can do that manually anyway. You don't need the chain to protect you. You can make that happen forcibly.
Yeah, but now you're putting a burden on an exchange to start like securing everybody's wallets.
No, the user.
Wait, hold on. How do you manually add replay protection? Like the UTXO set can be spent on both sides without some sort of like hard fork, and as such,
there's going to be people
to, like, burn your own UTXO
sides.
to yourself on the. What's up? Sorry.
No, I'm just saying there's going to be autists who are replaying.
I'm going to make the 110 exchange. I'm going to make the best 110 exchange, the most honest 110 exchange. Somebody deposits into my exchange on one side, but I'm on the 110 side, and they decide they want to go back because, like, hey, the blocks are taking a week. They don't have my keys to re-sign to exit on the other side. I still have their Bitcoin on the other side if that transaction was replayed. That's actually quite dangerous.
You need replay protection. That's one thing that every single exchange made it clear. They don't list coins unless there's replay protection.
That's
what killed that's what killed XT. That's what killed.
Know that they have. You have to send yourself if you want to use that 110 chain. Otherwise, you risk burning your coins if you're wrong.
But Portland, that's only if you're willing to actually compete against. If you think Bitcoin is done, right? You think there's no hope for Bitcoin unless we reduce this op return, then you want to compete against the chain, and then you would add replay protection. You would compete. But from what I hear, most of them don't want an altcoin except for Luke. Luke does. Luke has wanted to fire the miners now for extremely long time. So like, if it was up to him, this wouldn't even be a debate. Like, he would have fired the miners. UASF'd it and called it a day. But I don't think that's possible. I don't think.
But my point though, if I'm thinking about this correct, without replay protection, without, like, let's just say you take the raw UTXO set and you're on the 110 side and you start spending to entities that are following along on the 110 side but don't follow along on the other chain, and they refuse to sign a transaction. I guess you could. Oh no, I'm incorrect. You're good. I was wrong because you would replay the transaction out of the exchange to the other side too. Unless the exchange
What do you mean?
internally. No, it's still bad. The exchange moves
one side would be progressing faster than the other.
The other side,
there's a big window.
The legacy side is fine. It's the minority side where the replay attacks could go on.
As long as it gets to where it's intended to, I don't see the problem at all.
Okay, so
you might not intend to send both sides to the same person is the problem.
Well, I don't like then the person who's worrying about that. I don't understand how they're worrying about it.
If I send my 100 Bitcoin
is a problem.
If I send my 100 Bitcoin to an exchange on the 110 side, and the 110 side takes my Bitcoin, somebody replays this 100 Bitcoin transaction on the primary chain. Still, you have the Bitcoin moving on both sides. But the exchange itself only works on the 110 side. They only use their keys on the 110 side. The exchange moves the Bitcoin internally.
I don't think an exchange
on the 110
should ever
side, but not
do
on the
that.
other.
Yeah, this is a hypothetical.
Well, exchanges move Bitcoin all the time internally, correct?
But an exchange when accepting, so if an exchange were to accept BIP-110 in the event of a minority chain split, I would assume they would do the coin splitting for you. They would say, send us coins. And, it would be replayed and it would land in both, assuming it even does, right? Because there's going to be some cases where new coins, new UTXOs, or because of maybe even certain spending conditions, they don't replay. And so I think they would just do the splitting for you if it was replayed, right? If it was replayed, they would automatically give you, that many BIP-110 and that many legacy coins on the exchange when you send it to them and it's replayed. But they wouldn't even necessarily know which one was sent first. I mean, there might be like pretty immediate replays happening.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I had to work through that.
I mean, but that's not the problem, right? The problem is that without replay protection, you might, let's see, you might send them your legacy coins, and like you sell them for cash, and then the BIP-110 side reorgs the legacy side, and now like if they're holding any of those coins, they just got fucked because they disappeared, right?
Yep.
So like you don't
Or
want
you
to
get
have
them,
chaos like that
or you get
with
them too. That's a bonus.
with funds
Double
that are
bonus. Very good.
yeah. Well, anyways, with funds that can disappear, you just don't really want to touch them as an exchange because you could be left holding the bag.
Wicked, would you mind co-hosting this space? Would you be down for that?
Sure. I think that should be fine.
Thanks.
I might have to mute at some point.
Yeah.
If I'm
I just need like a water break, like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thanks.
We've been going for 4.5 hours. Unbelievable.
How long was Mechanic here for?
About an hour and 20 minutes.
Ginormous amount of time.
What did he? I'm curious what his arguments were for the. I don't know if anyone could repeat it, but for the asymmetry he sees in a, what do you say, 10 to 20% minority hash rate on the BIP-110 side come mandatory signaling, because this is one thing I haven't been able to wrap my head around is what asymmetry he even sees there.
He just thinks he has the numbers. Subnet is powerful enough to force the issue.
That's delusional, though. That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I think typically when I've heard this argument, it tends to ignore the consequence of getting it wrong, right? Basically, the consequence of moving first because you think others will, but then others don't. And the consequence of doing that is you burn electricity for however long it takes you to realize you were wrong, right? And as an earlier mover, maybe you are going to be more stubborn and not admit for a while, because you're going to say, no, they're definitely coming over. And if they don't, like, how long are you going to keep it going before you rug it?
He's basing all of this on 2017, and he's missing a really big chunk of what happened in 2017 that wasn't really in the public eye. And he's just conflating it. Like, he's conflating everything. He's conflating the BIP-148. Like, it wasn't BIP-148 that activated SegWit. It was BIP-91 that activated BIP-141, right? Like, it was... I don't know. The whole thing is just... I don't think he's exaggerating. I think he believes this is how it worked in 2017, and that's why it's going to work now. But it's just a completely different scenario. I don't think it's anything alike.
To me, it very simply represents, I don't think there's a lot at stake on the other side besides a bruised ego, and there's a lot to gain by demonstrating that you could take a small vocal minority and change the world's most robust consensus mechanism.
How does that work?
And get engagement the whole way through.
With the next time that comes around, though.
Engagement is the most important part, in case you guys forgot.
Well, I think I would imagine that if this were to prove to work, then what we would do moving forward is, if there was real opposition to something, we would basically have to coordinate around a URSF that was larger. I mean, I guess this would be the theory, right? If there's some threshold that is a minimum, like a minority that can activate something, then you just need to have a larger number of user rejected. Right.
You have to have a larger
it'd be a
minority
battle of the soft fork every time, someone wants to propose something, you'd get a bunch of people who would say nope, and then they would reject it outright.
Battle of the minorities.
But honestly, that's a retarded consensus mechanism. So I really hope that that's not true.
I mean, it's pretty much a similar story. The longest economic valid chain, the longest economic chain with the most. The longest valid chain with the most.
Imagine if you had to pay attention to every change ever made to Bitcoin and decide whether or not you wanted it or wanted to reject it, and you couldn't just run like legacy.
No, you don't even have to just watch every change. You also must be a marketeer on Twitter and go out and
that's only right. That's true. Sure.
Some of
us do that just for fun.
Hey, wicked, super slippery slope. This is going down.
1,000 years in the desert. That's all this is doing. All this is doing is just ossifying the chain faster. That's all that's happening.
No. Demonstrating this would actually show a power shift away from developers to podcasters and influencers. It would be influencer defined consensus instead of rough consensus.
Yeah, no, this will be a completely different consensus mechanism, and therefore a completely different shelling point, and therefore to me a completely different Bitcoin.
If this somehow succeeds, you guys won't see me anymore. Yeah, I will delete my Twitter account.
Well, I just won't be interested in the project anymore.
I will fucking be out of here.
It's trivial to reject.
What are you gonna save in instead of Bitcoin?
S&P 500.
No, I'm gonna still. I'm still having Bitcoin. I'm just leaving. I'm gonna leave like
social
Bitcoin
media.
Twitter. Yeah, I'm leaving this. I'm out.
I'll stick around.
Take it back.
I'll watch for
If
the
it's not going to be about the price here, if it's going to be about how
Wicked,
state
that's
transitions work, then we're all out. Get everybody out of here.
I mean, if the consensus is
Second
not
Wicked, like
censorship resistance, then I'm out.
Yeah, Wicked. Like, what are you going to save in? Like that question. If BIP-110 activates through a vocal minority, I don't actually believe that Bitcoin differs much from fiat itself.
It's PayPal.
It's not.
Like that's my issue. Maybe it has a better, a
But
slightly
this
harder
is
coin
such
cap.
an unrealistic conversation. It's so fucking retarded to even think about.
No,
That like,
okay, yeah. Do you need me to read the post again about like the last 2.5 years debating Bitcoin network policy were likely the worst form of preparation Bitcoiners could have done to prepare for AI?
Imagine when Saylor's fork comes along. Imagine when the state fork comes along, and it says, if you're a terrorist, if you're not on this fork.
Ding.
You know.
That's what I'm talking
I don't
about.
actually believe it's going to happen. That's why I can talk so candidly about like how I would hypothetically react to like 110 activated.
Saylor's fork is going to be a lot more dangerous if it ever does happen, because he'll have some real economic will behind him, not just his own, but many others. Plus, he would. I mean, you only get to sell your split coins once, so that's one single action that results in some demand on the other side, temporary demand. But what really matters is like the long-term demand in the end,
which he fucking has none of.
He might not have any, but I think he has influence over other people who do.
Maybe.
And so you have to account for that, right?
Right now,
even if Roger Ver was poor,
guys, let me tell you right now,
in his moment, he still influenced a lot of others.
Let me tell you right now, he could definitely,
but he wasn't poor.
He definitely has enough influence to have his own coin, but it wouldn't even be that much bigger than Bcash. It really wouldn't.
What's Bcash?
BIP-110? BIP-110 would be smaller than
Bcash.
It would be way smaller than Bcash. That's my point. I'm saying like he does have enough to have a coin, but it's basically like a small Bcash.
I don't think he does. I think most BIP-110 supporters aren't supporters to the death. Like they wouldn't keep supporting it if it resulted in a permanent chain split.
They come right back to Bitcoin.
I think if everyone who was supporting BIP-110 was ready to fork off for good, then you could have a token that's like maybe worth
Wicked.
I don't know.
Could I
as much as BSV or like Bcash maybe at that point, but probably not. Wait, what was the question?
Look, my question is, could I'm just mentally modeling this. Could I create an exchange? Basically, I'd run two nodes, one 110 node and one Bitcoin.
Yeah, you do
standard node.
You do atomic swaps, but
between
but the thing is, the BIP-110 chain has to progress at a reasonable pace, otherwise it would never work. You can't do an atomic swap on a blockchain that has 1 day blocks.
I could settle on that.
You have to wait 100 blocks.
I think it'd be way too crazy. And the thing is, it'd be really crazy.
It'd be vulnerable to being attacked as
correct,
well.
Yeah.
For years.
The difference in block times
That would be
is way
super
too
fun
crazy.
to create an exchange, though. Like,
you could create basically
can I create an exchange so I could get
Portland
Bitcoin for these 110
You
coins?
can just do things, man.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Claude to make me an exchange.
And it'll do it in like a day. And it'll be done.
Use Pashu so you can do it virtually and settle out whenever blocks come out.
Make no mistakes.
Yeah,
that's.
I don't know. I mean, I think it'll be worth so little. It's not going to be worth. I mean, Portland, you were just complaining about how this shit is dragging you away from like your more important work.
Dude, me and Portland both.
I mean,
we got tokens.
You're not wrong, but like I could get distracted by burning tokens. Yeah, let's go.
Shit to do,
yeah, I mean, I guess if you built this, it might not be the only time we have to use it anyways. So maybe we'll have some use in the future.
I mean, like it's also an opportunity. Like I got to think about how much Bitcoin I could actually earn from selling my stack on the 110 side, right?
Well, and you'd be running the exchange, so you would take cuts as well.
Yeah.
Of everyone
I would
else's
take cuts,
trades.
but I wouldn't consider the cut the main thing. The main thing would be to liquidate my own 110
really?
coins.
You think
Call it
if you had the only like
Wait, yeah, if you're the
exchange
other
that
one
was doing this,
splitting it, I'll send you some fucking Bitcoin to split
No, I
for
would
me.
charge others as well to be in the liquidity pool. I'm just saying
That was
like,
one
I
of the
would
scariest
have-
parts during Bcash's fork, because especially in the very beginning, fucking you don't know what wallet was real, what wasn't. People are
yeah, I
trying
was
to
just
like,
gonna rug you.
yeah, so many rugs were happening during
I
that
didn't
time.
know
So
if
the
it was
I would be
safest,
honest.
an airdrop or not.
I would be a good guy.
the safest way to do it was to have
No,
coins
not
already
for
on. The
I'm
safest
just
way to do
gonna
it was to
tell
have coins
ChatGPT
on
to
an
do it for
exchange.
myself.
Because if you have coins on the exchange, Phoenix already split them for you. Like all these exchanges already, they basically split it for you. So
Does Sparrow Wallet let you add an op return onto the transaction easily, like a large op return?
No.
I
Because
never
that'd
seen
be the
seen
easiest way.
opportunities.
Is if some of these, like, I don't know, more well used wallets just had a little text field where you could monkey some
I can't
text
see.
into it.
Is that hard for him to implement? I can't see
No,
him like.
that'd be very
No,
easy.
it's a design choice.
Yeah, he doesn't want people to start putting in random shit. But honestly,
No.
like,
It's a brand thing. He doesn't want to be associated with spam. Like his wallet's pure.
I mean, you can. How hard would it be to? You could
That's
probably
what op
patch that
return is
yourself
for.
with
You literally could add a tab like
ChatGPT.
That's what op
op return,
return is
yeah.
for.
Hey, fellas, I gotta go. Can I just say real quick, Hunter,
Sure.
thanks for putting this on. I thought it was a really good, constructive conversation. A lot of the other ones that we've had, people didn't get answers, especially the non-technical people. They're just turning around and fucking fighting again, and it sucks. And I know there's like a level of responsibility some people feel that they have, and others don't feel. They're just like, well, fuck everybody, it's up to them. And it's like, well, okay, but are you really trying to help? And I just thought this was a good constructive one where there was some closure to some things that people normally don't get. I'm hoping that maybe you do another one, especially the next couple of weeks. I think it might be helpful to, help people maybe just stop being so fucking tribal, or understand how this does or does not affect them. So it was just cool to see everybody like not get along. Like, we don't want to do that. It's the bear market, but just be a little bit more cordial and like let people, let them dig their grave or prove me wrong. I think that's something that gave a lot of people some one of us say like, hey man, I didn't think about that. You're right. Like, that goes a long way. So good conversation. I hope you do another one soon.
Thank you, Gen X. I appreciate the appreciation, and I'm really just grateful for everybody who gave their time and attention. I thought it was really beautiful to see everybody working to find their common ground and treat each other as peers, as Satoshi would have wanted.
Yep.
Yeah, and look, my biggest thing about that is, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that the people in this space probably aren't my enemy. And I think people forget we get so tribal. I think there's a bigger beast coming, and this is just a test. And if we end up, getting all divided
100%.
and not finding some way to be very clear about what we don't agree with, or maybe we're just misunderstanding, and there's another way that we're both going to be happy or not. But I think there's a bigger beast coming. I hope we have an army.
There definitely is. And I just want to say, Gen X, like, just remember that humans are going to human. Set your expectations accordingly. We're all not going to get along. The Bcashers are still like Bcashers, but there is actually a fair amount of communication, probably more than most understand on the development side. But still, like, humans are going to human, and we're all going to try to do our best.
Yeah, I mean that's informed by scripture, even the fall in Genesis. So original sin and our tendency to bicker, and that's just that's not helpful or constructive. Thank you everyone for your time. I'm willing to continue the conversation and keeping the space open and give more time to more voices. And also thank you, Wicked, for co-hosting and keeping things going. And always just like, this is a recorded space, so if you need to come back to it, or if you want to reference it or whatever, that could be helpful too. Just wanted to hear more from more people on this topic and get people talking more. I see Ocean's Lawyer has come up as a speaker, Laggard, Labs also, and so just want to hear from more people and more involved. And also, Ezra, this is probably the first, I don't know if this is the first time we've spoken, but you brought up some interesting points earlier that I'd like to double click on. And, just want to keep the conversation ongoing. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, let's double click on that.
Well, Mr. Hoddle, and not to ignore you, I want to extend my appreciation for you being probably one of the most legit people in the space, I have to say.
I'm a faker.
You're cooler than you admit, and so I've been a fan for a long time, and I just think you're cool. So I want to extend my appreciation for your involvement. And of course, Wicked Smart Bitcoin. I mean, he's done some really cool visualizations, whatever. No, you do really good work too. So just a lot.
All right. Can we go back to fighting? This is
a little 2K.
Let's get back to fighting.
Let's get back to where we disagree. So Ezra, if you're still on, did you mention something about like a quantum resistant thing that you wanted to?
I was thinking about this because there was a interesting argument that you don't need to worry about a lot of the stuff that you have to worry about with other algorithms, and algorithms that don't just target intent but also target like mishaps that nobody really counted on in terms of the
Can you
key.
be specific? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're speaking about.
Well, specifically something about quantum stuff. It's it's kind of like a perspective.
The threat of CRTC, which side of it?
Well, the threat of miners, because part of this I think has to do with the miners and their fees, right? Making sure that running. Well, I mean, there's the trade-off of like hardware efficiency versus heat. People are trying to use their hardware to gain more from running it as a like cryptography machine rather than a space heater. So, but works better as a space heater, and there's other kinds of things that you could do. You could turn it into like green energy, but pretend that you don't do that. And then there's the what you're using it for, like kind of in terms of a metaphysical perspective for that too. So all that you want to say, like for both of these arguments, the BIP-10 versus not kind of thing, that if as long as you have the keys on the legacy chain, then you really can't like there's no danger of losing anything, isn't there?
No, legacy is fine. The legacy chain isn't threatened at all. It's if there's a minority fork, the minority chain gets threatened.
There is, I think, a game theoretic argument.
Okay, hold on. If there's an actual chain split, and if the minority fork ever gets more work than the legacy chain, then that minority fork could wipe out the legacy chain. That's a really big if.
Well, I think there is a game theoretic case to be made for whenever you tighten protocol consensus through a soft fork in such a way that could prevent a kind of attack that would create an undue burden on node runners, it sort of creates a interesting game theoretic dynamic where maybe the most defensible chain winds up being the one that is most advantaged.
Well, I was saying like hash is kind of like something that compounds. So later in the kind of structure thing, if you can get the other side to give up hash, later on, it's more valuable because it's compounded so much. I think it would be the idea so that you can use the difficulty adjuster in an effective way to kind of manipulate all of the mining on Bitcoin, right? So again, that the problem, it doesn't work. It's not really a problem because because there's no way that you can say we have more work done on a shorter chain without a quantum computer that can like lie to the network somehow and
Well,
do
so
that.
far as I understand about the possibility of using Grovers to compete with ASIC miners, I think that reality is probably almost never going to happen from the math that I've looked at. Though maybe there's some other way to do it, but from my math, you would need about maybe 8 to 10% of the output of the sun to run Grovers at even just
It's of
hash
no
rates.
concern. It's not even.
So like you would double
why
the
we're-
hash rate, and like even then, what would you have accomplished? You'd become maybe 50% of the hash by building a Dyson sphere around the sun, but still, like it doesn't need quantum computing to do that.
But then this is the other thing. This is like another one of those shadow of Satoshi things. Is like Satoshi did make those 2 or 3 or however many it was, like changes. It's definitely less than 5. Like where he forked the network, blah blah blah, and the UTXO set had whatever different rules. Maybe it was or something like that. And so I think that's the other thing, right? Is you're relying on the by this time, like compounded into gigantic corporations of energy.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've thought about a lot. And I did publish it on my Substack a few years back, where I put forth a theory that there was a possibility that Satoshi was either an alien or a angel or something. But regardless, the reason why I was thinking like it was just so absurdly. There's a couple weird things, right? One is, his decision to, in the original client, include both the capability to create a what we now call a P2PK output commitment, and also a P2PKH commitment, and they were treated separately. There was also, I think, pay to IP, but that was in the original 0.1 Bitcoin client. But to like P2PK and P2PKH, like the first public key hash commitment on chain is about 2 weeks after Jan 3, right? So that's interesting, because the capability to receive coins to a hash commitment did exist in the original client. It was just not utilized to receive mining rewards, which some people say it was simpler that way. But like, if we're talking about Satoshi's shadow, like the ultimate consequence of that fateful decision was it puts about 5 to 10% of the coin supply in harm's way should a CRQC ever prove to become a viable concern, right? And
I have an answer. I have a speculation. Yeah. Sorry, why he didn't use if you guys want.
Yeah, I want to hear that for sure.
So the thing is, like, when Satoshi called, that Satoshi calls Bitcoin addresses, and it's like, where the fuck does this name even come for, right? Because it sounds kind of weird, and we all know how that's a bad name, blah, 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 address reuse. And the thing is, like, if you look at the Bitcoin Core version 0.1, which I have to say, kind of been looking at for the last year or so, the thing is, like, most of the transactions that, I don't know why you're laughing, that's the real thing. Most of the transactions that were done back then in the first periods, including with Halfini and Dustin Trammell, check out my video, they were done via an IP address, because Satoshi realized that, hey, the easiest way to make this a good user experience would be to give me your IP, and then you send, what means this send via IP? I have my node, you give me your IP address, and now via the Bitcoin version 0.1 protocol.
Don't forget, everybody was an IRC. So like your IP was like DNS this person, and you got their IP.
Shut up. You don't know what you're talking. I mean, no, what you said is correct, but you're jumping ahead of yourself. Let me finish. So the thing is, like, and that doesn't have to do with this. I mean, it has to do with this part, but not direct. So by the way, the question was, why didn't he hash all those public keys? That's what I'm trying to answer right now. You are right what you said, but it's tangential this. Right, so the way it works, you connect to another node via the IP, and then it goes like, oh, this is a Bitcoin core. Okay, send me your private keys. Okay, here's my private key, because this is the most minimal thing you need to send to someone else. So he was just thinking like, well, since we're doing this protocol, the simplest thing is just use a bare public key because we don't need, that's not an issue. No one thought about, no one thought about like quantum computers and stuff. So that's why this is called an address, because he was like, I'm going to make this as an IP address. It makes sense when you call it that because, hey, give me your Bitcoin address. Oh yeah, here's this IP where you can send me Bitcoin. And then when they added the other things for the script, the scripts were there, as Hunter very correctly pointed out, and the capability was there. Then when that happened, they kind of like stuck with the naming. So I think I'm fairly certain this is how it would. This is the main reason. But you never know.
Wait, what was the reason for why in the original Bitcoin client 0.1, where mining rewards would default to P2PK outputs? What is the reason, just in concise language, why do you think that he made that decision?
Well, as I told you, so the main way of transaction he thought is via IP. And I just think since we already had this protocol and he wanted to make data small and whatever, people were still paranoid. I don't know if you guys remember how things were in 2009. Not I remember from Bitcoin, but I remember from the internet. Data was still kind of constrained and stuff. People were trying to make things small. And I just feel like the most minimal thing you needed to do this pay to IP thing is just a pub key. So he was like, well, let's just use pub keys.
No, pub keys were not minimal back then. They didn't have like the compressed pub key format that we have now. There were 65-byte commitments that were hex encoded. So at least in some cases, but like regardless, at least like visually, not on chain, I'm saying, but regardless, like it was 65 bytes, right? Along with, the other aspects that you need to validate the script hop key, like this check.
I'm sorry, you're very correct. What I meant by simpler, I just suspect that he just wanted to just have one simpler thing. And like, what was the most simplest thing? Well, just the pub key. But that's what I think.
No, that's the thing though, is like the P2PKH capability was in that client, so people could just use that. It was and send that. I mean, wasn't that also base 58 encoded at that time also? So like I'm not sure. Like, so are you saying? I'm not sure. I guess I just don't understand.
I'm not sure myself. I just think that he was like, well, the way we transact Bitcoins is via pub keys because that's the most minimal thing you need to make this transaction. I just think he was like, let me just use this. That's what I think. I can't prove to you this.
He may have made that decision prior to bringing in P2PKH and then just not updated it.
You're so right. I think you're right, actually.
So you're saying it was,
you know why he's right?
So you think it was an oversight and not intentional?
Actually, I think
it may have been intentional because he figured it's good enough and it's not worth changing. I mean, that could also be a decision he made, but who knows?
Maybe
there is one piece of information
connected to the node, and then you wouldn't have to hide it from the rest of the network.
Dustin was the one that told Satoshi. Dustin was the one that told, because Satoshi, when he sent Dustin 25 Bitcoin, he asked for Dustin's IP address, and Dustin was like, this isn't a really secure way of doing things.
Yeah, it's funny that like Satoshi is such like a cryptography legend, but they hadn't like counted like the possibility that like giving out your residential IP on a forum online forever is probably a bad idea. Which to me sounds like the kind of logic an alien in low Earth orbit would use, because like he knows nobody's going to be coming to his residential IP. So I'm just saying, like the alien hypothesis is not yet disproven.
Did you look up on Google Maps? Is that what you're saying?
By the way, what Wicked said actually as the answer, I forgot about this, but like initially Satoshi had a previous version of Bitcoin and he sent it to some people after white paper and after release. And I don't know if you guys know, there's this Bitcoin talk post where some of those guys, the super early cryptographers, shares this. And by the way, in that Bitcoin talk post says this version did not have script. People comment there. So actually Wicked is absolutely onto something. I mean, that makes the most sense now when you think about it. Exactly what Wicked said. That's the proof.
He wrote that mechanism earlier on before he had
scripting.
Yeah. So I mean, that could be it. Who knows? And then an oversight not to change. I mean, he built this software fairly quickly, right? At least from any updates he may have made between the white paper and the release. I mean, that was only a few months.
Yeah, and he also added a poker client too.
Right. So he was working on a bunch of like retarded shit. So it's not that out of the question that he'd just be like, good enough, it works. No reason to like update it to this newer idea,
Yeah,
which is
but he also
better
did
in some
give
ways.
some
But
indications that he was aware that public key cryptography could be broken by quantum computers, and
so
there
if you're
was,
getting at the idea that he did it on purpose as a bounty for quantum, I mean,
I
who
mean,
knows?
it is a
The
possibility.
idea of
That's
Bitcoin being a quantum computing alarm clock has been
did
around
that
since
idea ever
forever.
cross his mind ever?
No, I don't. I
Prior to
never. No,
releasing
I don't. I
Bitcoin,
think that idea
maybe.
came after
But
he left. Yeah, after he was
was it his
gone.
primary reasoning for doing it? Most likely not. I mean, I think he probably
Probably
would have
not.
mentioned it if it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely doesn't pass like Occam's razor like that, but it's still a fun
Yeah, I
theory
don't
to
think
think
so.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, like, who knows? Maybe it was a passing thought at one point, and we'll never know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I
it's a
think it's
reason.
also
It's a reason not to
possible
rug them, in my
there
opinion.
is a possibility, Wicket, that if I am correct in my theory that Satoshi was an alien, then Trump will disclose their presence, and QAnon will also like kind of chime in and support. Yeah, no, Trump is draining the swamp, and he's disclosing the deal with the Pleiadians and the Telosians and the Agarthans, and
Dude, you're so more retarded when you talk
It
on
was a
voice. I
lot
swear to
more
God.
impressive whenever the sky was full of stars. You had to wonder which one was the Pleiades.
Yeah.
In your
Anyway.
defense.
Is it not full of stars anymore?
No, I don't know. That didn't work out. In your
I haven't
defense,
looked up at the sky for years.
Arizona, you have to be Nick Carter.
There's
Like
still
your
a sky
voice
up
is
there.
like Nick
It's
Carter, by the way.
definitely
There's no
him.
way this is.
It's
I mean, there's
100% him. This
no way you're not
motherfucker
Nick Carter.
needs to get his
I'm-
information. He can't do it on his name anymore, so he created a sock, and now this is what he's using.
That's the billion pronunciation of my name.
I mean, look at the way you have that.
Get him.
That's Nick Carter voice fingerprint. Get the fuck out of here, dude.
You know what? I know Nick Carter, and I know some things that probably only Nick Carter would know. Ezra,
from a gay furry, that's not a good thing to hear, by the way.
Why is that?
Use your imagination, Hunter.
I mean, my imagination's pretty wild.
You don't say.
Yeah. No. Let's see, Ezra. Let's see. How can we prove that you are or not Nick Carter? If you'd be interested.
Similarhoodness is an endomorphic functional idea.
I guess he is.
Well, like what's interesting is that I've read Nick Carter's writing on elliptic curve cryptography, and it's it's interesting. It's not fully complete. Let's see. Can you tell me what a generator point is?
Wait, but Ezra doesn't want to be Nick Carter.
I know
Why would he
lots
tell you that?
about like mathematics, but I don't really know a whole lot about the cryptographical application of those things. But I generally tend to think that all of the things that cryptographers use, and whenever it's a binary format or something, they're trying to leverage some kind of like power set of equations and different kinds of points that you can choose from. For instance, like playing the violin versus playing the piano, like discrete kind of thing. You're trying to make it easier or harder to guess what the next expression is supposed to be.
You know what?
But most of the cryptography, most.
I will tell you that like I've spoken to Nick Carter enough that you do not actually sound like Nick Carter to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I don't even know who Nick Carter is at all. But like,
well, he was a Backstreet Boy.
Yeah,
he also wrestled Joe Rogan, and he founded a company that's worth multiple billions of dollars. I don't know.
All right.
Wrestled Joe Rogan. I'm sure you enjoyed that part, didn't you?
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. What else? What else we got? Ocean speaker or a lawyer. Yeah, this is the first time we've had a conversation. I'm be curious of your thoughts.
Well, Ezra. Wait,
you're still talking to me? I don't know. Did I offend somebody with the
coins,
with the guessing? No.
I was going to bring this up earlier. What do we think about Paul Sztorc's his fork of eCash.
Yeah, I was on a space earlier this week. It was kind of interesting. I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not a fan of hard forks. And like I liked his ideas around the QSYF, and I think, I don't know. I mean, I think it could make some sense for, like with hash rate escrow and what is the other one? BIP-301. BIP3. Yeah, Drivechains and hash rate. Yeah, right. Okay. So the two BIPs, BIP-300 and BIP-301. What's interesting about that is they sort of like allow other chains to benefit from Bitcoin security. And there are certainly arguments to be made around perverse incentives and evil, as Matthew Coralla puts it, and other things. But generally, I think it would be probably a net benefit to give people the capability to sort of securely bridge their coins onto these other chains and do whatever shenanigans they want off of Bitcoin main chain proper. I think that would be probably a net benefit to Bitcoin, in my opinion, because it gives like a place for the spammers to go and go do their shit over there, and we don't have to worry about BitVM crap. We don't need a bunch of less than ideal bridging solutions. But I mean, there are obviously finer points of detail on all of these things. It's a very nuanced conversation. But generally, I'm supportive of drive chains and soft forks and things like that, even QSYF, and refining further and deeper protocol consensus changes. I think Paul Sztorc is a very clear thinker on how soft forks can happen practically. I found his insights really valuable there. That said, I'm not sure if I'm on board the eCash train. But at least the way he calls it. But eCash also, just to be clear, I'm speaking to Paul Sztorc's version of eCash and not like Chowmin eCash or other things, right?
It's bizarre naming, and the timing is suspicious. I don't know. I was gonna say, earlier, Mechanic was very cordial. Kind of surprisingly so. Maybe it was just, the wolf's den. But no, I was thinking one way we could, you want to just do kumbaya and bring everyone together. He was in favor of reducing the block size, and I think a lot of opponents to 110 are also in favor of that. So I mean, that could be a bridge. Once I think 110 fails, that could be there could be some agreement there if they want to, because that's the true way of reducing data on chain. I mean,
does it make it easier to run a node, or does it make it harder to run a node? I guess is my first thought.
This is not an emergency, so that's another reason why I object to this. That's something I wanted to raise with Mechanic. But anyway, if they had just said let's just get more consensus before we put a deadline on this thing, I think they might have gotten me to switch over.
Dude, how much more do you want? It's like 10 years. He waited 10 years. I'm trying to say he got bored of it.
Luke, yeah.
No, we're talking about Paul. Like you said, if Paul would have waited, he's like, how much could he wait? He's like, do this for 10 years. He was like, I can't take it anymore.
Alex, he was talking about Mechanic and BIP-110.
Well, yeah, I went back to Mechanic, but yeah, the fact that
I didn't hear that.
Both of these forks are happening at once. I mean, one's a soft and one's a hard, but
well,
I don't know.
The problem is Paul just never realized that he could push things through with a minority of users.
Yeah, and he probably will, right?
I think that's a joke, and everyone thinks it's a joke. He knows it's a joke, right? I mean, there's no one serious.
No one will.
That one.
No, well, I mean, he won't push it through Bitcoin. He'll push it through eCash.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can do anything you want in terms of hard forking with any number of people who are willing to do that. And with a hard fork, I mean, the stakes are a lot lower because you just get a free airdrop. and there's no like disruption that can happen, assuming it has replay protection and everything like that.
Yeah, man. So what's going to happen with Luke and Mechanic and Datham and all these guys? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go?
Nowhere. They're going to stick around, I think.
Yeah, we'll just double down and fork harder.
I mean, maybe, but I think that's just such a losing proposition.
I thought that the hash rate, like
Won't do it.
greedy lever, was only being cranked in like an absolutely positive sense, something like that. So like you're never gonna let the other side get 50 whatever plus % of hash power because you just don't trust them, even if they're a gigantic other corporation with legal stuff and all that. I don't understand that either. No, if they both have legal obligations, then why not? You know, what does it matter that they have more than 51% of the hash singly?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, the minority of the people who are going to be using their node to signal the thing that they're switching to versus like them being the total set of the amount of people that are using the network. And then it's like, and yeah, so it doesn't matter if oh my god, how do I like simplify this in like a much better way? It doesn't matter if the amount of people that are using what this is against is or is not an insignificant amount of people versus like the total amount of UTXO sets, because like a person can own more than one UTXO, right? So I mean, then they also have to be worrying about like getting that right. You know, that's another one of those we'll call them parameters.
Yeah, I mean, HD wallets give people the capability to have multiple UTXOs and not really associate them pretty cleanly, ideally. And then also, you know, economic nodes do kind of consolidate users, and also so does like shared VTXOs that people can kind of combine like kind of ownerships and over commitments in a sort of semi-trustless way. So it's I mean, UTXO set is one heuristic for.
How many people do you think are using ARC nowadays? Like legitimately?
I mean, that's a good question.
Hundreds, thousands.
I've been hearing more and more people more builders talk about ARC nowadays because they're building some pretty serious capability on either of the implementations I'm aware of. There's Stephen Roos's second, which is really cool, and then there's Tiero's Arc Labs, and I also really hope they fire Alex Burge, because like he's not really doing them any favors. I don't know what value he's providing them, but it might be like negative value because of just how like pretty much universally reviled he is in the community, in the way he talks.
What did he do to get popular in the past?
What's that?
What did he do to get popular in the past?
Alex B? I don't know. Yeah. Talk a bunch of shit. He's like really good at shit talking. Sometimes that's enough. I don't know. Like I'm really puzzled sometimes when people like are invited to conferences. I'm like, what did you do to earn your place here? Like
pontificate. You have to be willing to pontificate about things, and then basically that's like
Nick fucking Carter. Shut the fuck up. That was the most Nick Carter thing in the universe. Yeah. Pontificate. That's a Nick Carter word.
I mean, to be fair, like Nick Carter like does a lot of blogging, and in some ways himself, that is more work than I've seen ever come from Alex Burge. Also, it's funny. I've been so fucking unproductive in the last year because I've just been writing a bunch of half-finished projects that I've never like published, that I literally have fewer GitHub commits than Mechanic, this year, in the last year, which is kind of a little embarrassing. People have been kind of calling me out on that, and it's just because I haven't really done a lot of building in public, and I've been sort of like, there's a lot of reasons for it, but mostly like a lot of my work on building a company and writing a BIP and doing a lot of other things, but unfortunately not as much slinging code these days. And the code that I do sling also, I often don't type by hand. I probably lost my finger memory for Rust, but
Is there no
I can
Claude
still
commit?
read it just fine. What's that?
Is there no Claude commit feature?
Claude what?
Claude
I don't
commit,
use Claude.
commit to GitHub. I don't know.
Oh, I don't use Claude at all. I really do not like what they're doing. That is one service I never signed up for. The other one was Meta. Meta and Claude are two of the frontier LLMs I've never signed up for, and I have zero interest in using.
But what do you use then? OpenAI? Codex?
No, I don't. Dude, Sam Altman, in my opinion, and I'm just going to be really honest about my thoughts on Sam Altman. I think he's a consummate zero-sum thinker who's essentially like every reason, like he's literally why people hate like the gay and evil meme. Like the gay and evil meme is Sam Altman and Peter Thiel. Like it's like people are right to dislike both those people. And then of course like Dario Amodei is gay but not evil, and so he just didn't make it, and it's sad and pathetic. No, I don't respect really any of the frontier model lab makers except for Elon Musk. I think Elon is, if I had to trust one person in the world for some reason, I think maybe the richest man in the world isn't a bad choice. I mean,
and he's retarded. The fact that he's retarded makes him trustworthy. Think about it. He's too retarded to have an agenda or something. He's just like, I want to build rockets and I'm rich. And he's like a normal human being, just that he's rich and retarded.
He's relatable. I wouldn't call him a normal human being, but he is very relatable. When Epstein like says like he invites it to a party or something, and like Elon's like, dude, I'm building a rocket company and a car company. Why would I want to go to New York and hobnob with like diplomats? And he
said there were girls there, and he said, I'm building rockets. It was even more that's like there will be cut women or maybe young women, whatever he said there. And he was like, no, I'm too busy building a rocket, or I'm too busy changing the world. Says something like this.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like I totally get it, because like as somebody who's like just a little on the spectrum, I will admit, by older versions of the DSM, it's funny. Like I totally get his perspective, and like, what value am I going to get in talking to a young woman when my interests are rockets and trains and electric cars and engineering? Like what do they know? Why are they going to be interesting to me? Like I totally get that. Like that's kind of my perspective on pretty much anybody under the year like the age of 30 in general. But regardless, I mean, there's some good ones. It's just generally like I don't find a lot of value engaging with them, other than just maybe like in an educational or maybe like, I don't know. But I also try to reduce like how much I engage with younger people anyway, just because I don't want anybody ever to like think I'm a creep or something, So anyway,
so
I'm a big fan of Grok.
Okay.
How old am I?
How old are you?
I've got.
You're what? You don't look a day over 50. I'm gonna tell you.
I know, I do.
Dude, I'm old. We're old, Alex. We're older than everyone here, man.
No, I'm young.
I think we're the oldest one, Alex.
No, I'm pretty young. I mean, I'm in my 30s, dude. I look like shit.
I thought you were in your 40s. So I'm the oldest one here. I'm 42. I'm like a fucking geezer here.
Oh, well.
I was 27 when I discovered Bitcoin. Now I'm 42.
27.
Fuck.
That's a good age, because you were kind of like a bit mature enough to kind of be like, okay, this could be serious, so you can kind of like.
Dude, I was dumb enough to not understand how any of this could fail. But I was smart enough to know that this shit, it was like, the finite amount. Satoshi, how Satoshi said we got to go to the libertarians? Well, like, I got that message. I was a libertarian. I was a Ron Paul guy. So it was like the perfect timing, I guess. Yeah,
That's funny
I
because it's funny. Oftentimes in the libertarian community now, there are some libertarians who are just so irrationally hateful around Bitcoin. It's kind of funny. Like there's like
because they got wrecked. They got wrecked with fucking Dash and Litecoin.
for sure. There was a furry Telegram group for libertarians, and a lot of us can't go into it because they just like are super hostile to Bitcoin. And like I'll even like talk to like other pretty based, like Republican guys, but they'll often not like want to platform me or engage with me because I'm a contributor to Bitcoin. And so it's just really kind of unfortunate and sad that like there is a lot of skepticism still around Bitcoin, and that's why like it's important to sort of reframe the discussion from crypto to like sound money and making sure that we have a viable plan B. That because like the problem with gold is that it's essentially gold is a bet that we're not going to figure out a way to break gold. And in my opinion, that's not a safe bet for 5 different reasons that I can even just imagine right now. Like 99.8% of the gold in the solar system is in the sun. So if we ever figure out like how to create plasma lances that sort of, eject the material, stellar lifting.
That's true. Is that true? Is that really true? Is there gold on the sun?
It's in the sun.
Well, it's 100% true. It's in the core.
Well, I mean, it's circulating in the plasma. Like
is it in the upper plasma?
Oh well,
no.
It's crazy. The stellar lifting is the technique I'm describing, and it could be used to. Maybe
I thought heavier things settled in the core.
It depends. Like it's.
There's no way that's gonna be the heaviest though.
It's a very
dynamic.
Well, gold's not the heaviest, but it's heavier than iron.
Well, okay.
And a sun is typically made. I mean, our sun is made up of mostly hydrogen.
Hydrogen and helium, yeah,
with a tiny bit of helium.
Yeah, and then what I think what makes sense is to build like a magnetic shield to prevent another Carrington event, and then explore what we could do to strategically sort of take off lithium, right? If we could mine.
I think I saw this episode of the anime, by the way. I think I saw it before.
So if we can mine the sun for lithium, then we can basically extend its lifespan because then it's not burning lithium, right? So I think that would.
I think the more rational thing. I mean, this is way off in the future when we need an ungodly amount of lithium. But the more practical thing to do would just be to mine asteroids. At the moment, they have way more than enough.
Startups right now, Transastra and Astroforge, in the United States alone, whose entire business model is exactly that.
Is figuring that out.
There's even more startups in China that are also doing that. So there's a possibility that we'll be mining near asteroids, and also there's the mission to 16 Psyche, which is due to arrive in 2029 to sort of examine that planet.
So you're saying it's easier. It's easier to mine asteroids than it is to go down to the ocean and dig gold up from there,
right? So we could be
potentially
filtering seawater. We could be
also the amount you'd get, the yield from the asteroids would be significantly higher.
Well,
maybe
I don't know. I mean, like I think it's worth exploring all 5, right? So there's.
Think about how easy it was to mine gold in California if you were the first one. I mean, presumably these asteroids will just have like streaks of gold if they're the right type.
Well,
or you can just walk up and just fucking
under the ocean
pick it up.
Right? It does depend on the amount of energy you need to expend to get to that orbit. That's why there's near Earth asteroids that are worth exploring. That's why 16 Psyche, like it's further away, but it might be more of a gold mine. You never know. So yes, stellar lifting.
But in some ways, Mr. Hoddle, the deep ocean is harder to navigate than deep space.
The pressure,
deep space, it'd be near.
Yeah, there's the old joke, right? Like from Futurama, where they take the spaceship underwater, and Leela asks Dr. Farnsworth, "How many atmospheres of pressure can the spaceship endure?" And he's like, "Well, it's a spaceship, so somewhere between 0 and 1." Also, so yes, there's
the problem with gold that there's no difficulty adjustment built in.
Exactly, and so it's interesting.
Well, isn't there? There's a psychological one because people only hoard it. Nations only hoard it whenever they get riled.
Well, it's just more confirmation of the subjective value theory, right? But or perception value. But regardless of that, there's also a fourth way, which is to take DT. So if we are able to get Q over 1 for DT fusion, which is interesting, like the approach Commonwealth Fusion Systems is using, or CFS, they're taking an approach where they're using an efficient sort of higher temperature superconductor called Rebco tape, that they're able to sort of take Rebco and make smaller, more efficient coils for their tokamaks than are being used to construct the ITER reactor in France. And in addition, they're working with Google DeepMind to on something called Alpha Evolve to create a program that essentially can optimize plasma physics. And what's exciting about that is that Alpha Evolve is like a broader application of the techniques used to solve protein folding, AlphaFold, which is, you know, an actual advancement that AI has given us that we used to think we needed quantum computers for, but it turns out no, actually humans can.
I was doing folding on my
Exactly.
GPUs.
So if humans can intuit that, then you can make a neural network that can do it, right? And there is also a possibility that maybe we can intuit how to control plasma physics, kind of like Doc Ock from the old Marvel. What was it, the second Spider-Man movie or something? I'm something of a a scientist too, right? Regardless, the fifth way, I can imagine gold being debased by just our understanding of physics, of nature, as it's evolving, which is really interesting, is essentially the Casimir pressure of the vacuum density is interesting. It's being investigated by somebody. He's Dr. Harold Sunny White. He used to work for NASA EagleWorks, and he, dedicated his career to investigating warp drive. And so he created something he called the White-Jude interferometer because, or co-created, I should say, because that was one of the first things you need to do to measure if you had the capability to create a warp field. You still need to be able to measure that first, right? So, and he also advanced a lot of our understanding of the Alcubierre metric, how to optimize that using Planck length or Planck thin warp bubbles. And he also recently published some really interesting research on how there are almost acoustic variations in the vacuum density for those who are familiar with quantum field theory and quantum chromodynamics and all of that, right? Like kind of the virtual particles popping in and out. He's essentially devised a way that he claims that essentially could be used to asymmetrically and passively harvest virtual electrons from the vacuum energy using Casimir cavities that are etched into semiconductors, which could be really interesting because essentially the way the Casimir pressure scales is fascinating when you consider that it essentially the universe is giving us an incentive to develop atomically precise manufacturing and mastery over the nanoscale, because essentially it scales in a really powerful way. It scales both volumetrically, which is basically d over to the fourth, I think, or something. There's a 1 over d to the fourth. That's right. Yeah. And then no, that's third. Volumetric is third. 1 over d to the third, and then the 1 over d to the fourth is how the Casimir pressure scales as you shrink the size of the collector, which essentially allows you to fit more of the collectors in the same volume of semiconductors, and also you're able to harvest virtual electrons of shorter wavelength, which allows you to generate more energy, a lot more energy, as you shrink the details of your process node, which also kind of combines with other efforts to use things like free electron lasers to advance the state of the art in EUV lithography, and also as an alternative to EUV lithography, I should say. But you're literally building a particle accelerator to etch, atoms on the atomic scale. Which essentially is fascinating, because if we can develop essentially a recursively compounding mechanism for creating energy using semiconductors, which also incentivizes us to build particle accelerators like they're doing in various other places like Japan, EU, here in America, and also in China, that essentially creates an economic incentive to finance particle accelerator development in an industrial application, which then also essentially helps contribute to debasement of any material that might become valuable and develop a monetary premium. So I can
It'd be a pretty expensive way to develop an iPhone chip, though, right?
Well, what's interesting is that if basically if there's ever any excess wafer capacity, or if there's like if it's always a cost benefit, it becomes a more interesting refinement in how we measure and develop the economics around some of these things, kind of like how if we can crack Q/1 for DT fusion by incorporating a blanket in how they normally have like a lithium fuel blanket, when it's exposed to the neutrons, the high energy Bremsstrahlung radiation, right, it essentially would be used to turn mercury into mercury-197, which would then decay into AU or gold, essentially. And this is outlined in a paper what was released by a company called Marathon Fusion last year. No relation, by the way, to Marathon Holdings, but or Marathon Digital Holdings, also commonly known as Mara. But regardless, Marathon Fusion put out a paper about what they called modern day chrysopia, where essentially you're capable of generating gold at a rate of 2 to 5 metric
Yeah, so
tons
alchemy, right? In a fusion reactor.
Yeah.
But in minute amounts.
No. It's 2 to 5 metric tons of gold per year per gigawatt of capacity.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. But also that gold.
Wait, making it out of what?
Out of mercury. And I think it's mercury-198, then it goes through a decay process, but you feel free to fact check me on that. But regardless.
Yeah, once we have fusion, I mean, like, electricity is free at that point.
Well,
it's like a star, right?
Is that isotope of mercury less expensive than gold to process?
Yeah, it doesn't have a monetary premium. It's a commodity metal.
And then it becomes a byproduct of
well,
the
but
reaction.
how much does that cost per ounce? Or like, it wouldn't be ounce; it'd be a weight, it'd be a volume.
It depends, but like it depends on a lot of things, a lot of factors. But it is one possible pathway of about 5 or 6 different possible technological pathways I can imagine could debase the gold supply within probably 25 years. And also, that's accounting for the fact that maybe it would take 20 years for the first gold produced in such a way to go from hot gold to essentially like more undetectable levels of radiation, because there would still be like impurities and isotopes kind of mixed in from the lithium blanket once it's drawn off. And so it would take like maybe 10 or 20 years for that hot gold to turn into something more like mixed in. But regardless of that, essentially the point I'm making is that like betting on monetary, like a monetary future based on gold is a bet against technological advancement. And if you want to bet instead on technological advancement, the AI will produce compounding technological benefits that could be, very serious and very like there is a possibility. Ray Kurzweil overshot the singularity in his estimation. Like, he thought it would happen in the year 2045. There's a possibility, whatever he was talking about, where like the rate of recursive self-improvement becomes such a disruptive factor. It might happen a lot sooner than that. We have no idea, and it's really hard to predict past that, right? So
well, DeepMind's done stuff to like stabilize fusion reactions, but they're also using AI to develop tensor chips, design tensor processors, right, which are then used to run AI, which becomes this like flywheel loop.
For sure, yeah, there's that too. The TPUs and the NPUs. There's also like fascinating stuff happening around in-memory computing. Memristors are a fascinating thing to explore. Silicon photonics are interesting as well. By the way, a lot of people don't know this, but Bitcoin has a really funny BIP. Like, to me, it's always funny that it's kind of like I call it the Tom Bombadil chapter of BIPs, because it just seems so idiosyncratic in its inclusion. It's BIP-52, and it's essentially a hard fork for optical proof of work that uses optical computers to compute, some kind of proof of work algorithm. And that is literally like a BIP that is there, that's been around for a while, and people didn't really even discuss it much. I thought it was funny. Like Luke Dash Jr. was like, "Oh yeah, whatever." Jeremy Rubin was like, "Yeah, whatever." It was just such a and the
Wait,
bar
what is this? I never
nowadays-
heard of this. Can you just explain in broad strokes what does it do? I don't even understand how that makes sense. Like, what do you mean?
Okay, so here's what you do. You type in your browser bips.dev, bips.dev.
Come on, dude.
/52, and it pulls up durable low energy Bitcoin proof of work dated 2021.
Come on, explain the fucking bit, dude.
Okay, I'm reading it.
Okay.
He's gonna read it word for word. Shut up, Alex.
Okay, so BIP-52, by the way, it's always important to just read the header so you get a sense of where it's at. So it is a consensus change, in parentheses, hard fork. That's the layer. The title is Durable Low Energy Proof of Work. The authors are Michael Dubrovsky and Bogdan Penkovsky, and they're at powx.org. I don't know if that site's still up.
He read the email. He was reading their email, dude. He's reading their email.
I mean, it's public.
Yeah, people usually put their emails on
It's
those.
public. And
It's
he said it's public. That was his response.
It's because your autism level is at fucking 11 right now.
But they linked the Caspa. Caspa uses this.
The simple summary, I'll just read that, is Bitcoin's energy consumption is growing with its value. They have a graphic below, and ends at 2021, which is interesting. And although scaling proof of work is necessary to maintain the security of the network, reliance on massive energy consumption has scaling drawbacks and leads to mining centralization. A major consequence of the central role of local energy cost in mining is that today, most existing and potential participants in the Bitcoin network cannot profitably mine Bitcoin, even if they have the capital to invest in mining hardware. From a practical perspective, Bitcoin adoption by companies like Tesla, which recently rescinded its acceptance of Bitcoin as payment, has been hampered by its massive energy consumption and perceived environmental impact. We propose a novel proof of work solution paradigm for Bitcoin, optical proof of work. It is designed to decouple Bitcoin mining from energy and make it feasible outside of regions with low electricity costs. Optical proof of work is a modification of Hashcash that is most efficiently computed using a new class of photonic processors. Without compromising the cryptographic or game theoretical security of Hashcash, OPAO shifts the operating expenses of mining, OPEX, to capital expenses, CAPEX, i.e. electricity to hardware. OPAO makes it possible for billions of new miners to enter the market simply by investing in a low-energy photonic miner. Shifting to a high capex proof of work has the added benefit of making the hash rate resilient to Bitcoin's price fluctuations. Once low OPEX hardware is operating, there is no reason to shut it down, even if the value of mining rewards diminishes. OPAO is hardware compatible with GPUs, FPGAs, and ASICs, meaning that a transitional period of optical and traditional hardware mining in parallel on the network is feasible. And they have some more information on their website, I guess.
But how does how does it generate a proof? Like using some sort of photonic fucking
Well, I'm also not
convinced. Or is it just
difficulty?
calculating? Is it just the speed of calculation? Because they're obviously, because if they use optical, they would be much faster, right? Than
well, first of all,
electron.
honestly, I haven't really dug into all of this in a serious way, because for a long time, most of my life, optical computers were just I don't know, science fiction.
Sci-fi. Yeah.
And what's funny is silicon photonics is kind of having a bit of a moment right now, where I literally okay, I talked to Greg, I was like, man, I gotta understand what the fuck is this, and it's
there's a German company doing it.
They have lots of companies all over, and Global Foundries has a thing in it, and so there's apparently they're using waveguides, modulation, efficiently accelerate the computation of various things. One thing they can do, for example, is 3D map mole multiplication using efficient ways to like kind of compose the transformation matrices that they use to compute sort of like the AI acceleration or inference or training and all of that, right? So
like an FPGA using light. That's crazy.
No, it's not, because like it's more like, think of it more like an ASIC that uses light, because it's not really that like field programmable, right? So
like an ASIC.
Yeah, for sure. And also another thing is, one of silicon photonics' biggest weaknesses right now is that like the memory cells, like you technically can have optical memory, but it's just incredibly absurdly inefficient in terms of f squared, which is like how f squared is a dimensionless number for measuring feature size of various, like different like ICs or blocks that you'd use on your semiconductor design, and according
It'd
to
be
like
huge, yeah.
VLSI rules, yeah. And like it's way worse than SRAM, and SRAM is already, in my opinion, absurdly inefficient, and I'm not a big fan of SRAM approaches as a consequence, like the 6T crossbar arrangement. But regardless, just from first principles, but that said, it is fascinating from like a compute acceleration standpoint. It's also fascinating from other angles too, because like optical computing could be useful for sort of like provable authenticity using maybe even like quantum techniques to like I don't know, prove that you're not being eavesdropped on and that sort of thing. There's 5D holographic storage. There might be like merit in using a like fully optical pathway between your compute, your storage, and your screen. You would have these
For
things
bandwidth.
Well, there's definitely like a interconnect details there you need to be thinking through. There's also worth mentioning that there are things called VCSELs, which are vertical cavity surface emitting lasers that essentially are really efficient at like turning I don't know, electrons into light and in a compact way that could be really useful if you wanted like kind of like almost like a fully optical pathway. So I've actually been like kind of designing an optical computer in my spare time, like the laptop of the future that I would be like the perfect laptop, and it would like you wouldn't need a battery. It'd be using Casimir cavities and maybe an ultracapacitor if necessary. It'd be really efficient. It'd use silicon photonics for computation. It would have like a like it would be like a clamshell format, but it would just be two screens, and then one of the screens you'd like have like a kind of a tactile key overlay, but it would just be like kind of like a passive matrix that would essentially allow you to direct the outputs from the silicon photonics chips to then go directly to the display, and then you'd have like a diffuser layer so you wouldn't get speckles in your eyes because you'd literally be shining lasers, and it would also be capable of projecting onto walls, like using laser projection, which is really cool because it doesn't need a lens. Actually, like, are really kind of cool that way. I even have one, like a small Sony unit that's you never need to like you can project it onto a wall, like the corner of a wall, and it's in focus. It's really cool. Yeah.
How would you cool it though? Because the lasers would require.
Well, no,
produce a lot of heat.
We'd be using VCSEL lasers, vertical cavity surface emitting lasers. They're really small and really efficient, and so it doesn't need a lot of energy at all to operate. And also, you'd have the 5D hollow storage, which would be sort of like a warm media, and it'd be like you'd have like petabytes of storage in this laptop, and but it would be write once, read many, and so you'd probably still want to like include maybe some
traditional storage,
memristors probably for like in memory,
but because of the capacity, right? You would have like absolute protection against data loss, ransomware, and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, memristors would be non-volatile. They have superior like durability than even SLC NAND even now. they can store multiple states per cell. Like, I think, at least probably safe bet somewhere between 5 and 50 bits of information per cell if you're using like the traditional memristor approach of using essentially like an analog pulsed signal to program and then like a DC signal to read. And then you would what's another benefit of memristors is that they're a much smaller f squared, so they take up a lot less room on the wafer than a lot of other memory cell approaches. Like SRAM is pretty terrible, but because it's like maybe 130 f squared. By comparison, you could probably, with some work, get the f squared of a memristor, especially if you're using a vertical process, maybe 2 to 4 f squared, which is very competitive towards DRAM. That's why DRAM is really dense, is because they have these really efficient ranked DIMMs that sort of like have these deeply etched channels for a capacitor. That's why they call DRAM 1C 1T, whereas SRAM is 6T. It literally has 6 transistors in an elaborate arrangement that flip-flops and crossbars that essentially switch quickly, and it's very computation. It depends on like and there's also like a something you said of energy consumping. By the way, I've done a lot of research in this rabbit hole. I don't know if anybody's finding value in what I'm talking about, but I think like there could be maybe a case to be made that memristors would be really useful for like a neuromorphic approach to AI accelerators that could be maybe considered like on the wafer scale. If we ever want to get more towards like quadrillion parameter LLMs, that would probably be on like what you would need to manifest something more like an ASI, like a super intelligence. Because like a lot of people don't realize this, but when we talk about parameter count in neural networks, that if you want to do a mapping, and it's not perfect, but if you want to map the concept of a weight or a parameter or a tensor in a neural network to more towards our brains, a lot of people think neural networks map to neurons, but actually neurons don't map well to the connections like tensors and parameters and weights do. It's actually the synapses. And our neurons can form hundreds and thousands of synapses and connections to their neighboring neurons. And so what's interesting there is that, and I'm crushing a lot of nuance around like activation of, neurotransmitters and the DMN.
Well, the synapse here, it's kind of like when the collapsing happens, like when it predicts the next token, the synapses happens as you run it, right? That would be the equivalent fake metaphor more precisely, because that's how the connection happens between the weights and whatever.
Computer science is like neuroscience. Almost said neurology for some reason.
There are some things that can map. There is a possibility we have isolated something interesting around thinking and learning that we have able to manifest into inference and training, right?
I completely disagree. And I think what the main conclusion here is that now we have intelligence, is that we managed to, this unveils something we didn't know about how information compresses. Let me give an example. What an LLM is, it's like, imagine you build a scarecrow and the materials are so good that from a meter away, you can't tell it's not a person, the skin, the everything. And the scarecrow is hollow, but we have this technology that when the wind blows, it moves exactly like a human. So you from afar, it's impossible for you to think that's not a human walking. But as closer and closer you get, even to a meter, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's not a human. When you look inside it, it's nothing.
I never made so the claim that they were that they are.
No, you said intelligence. Sorry, I was trying to contradict you in the fact that you said we found something about intelligence, and I'm trying to say it's hollow. There's no intelligence there. It's just information.
The claims and the terms. I'm saying that I'm not saying they're either conscious or aware. I'm just saying they're capable of thought. In the
I don't think that's true though. That's why I disagree. Sorry, go on.
Let me finish. I'm just saying that they're capable of maybe mimicking how we perform thought in not being conscious. Humans are capable of unconscious thought. and that is our subconscious and also our dreams, right? So we are capable of thinking, essentially forming thoughts and informing them sort of maybe autoregressively over our own like understanding of the world, our inputs and outputs, right? We are capable of doing that without always being conscious or aware of it. And as a consequence, I think maybe that might be more similar to where we're at now. And it's important also to kind of consider that the LLMs are imperfect right now, maybe because to some extent, there's a lot of reasons actually, but one reason is because there's simply not enough parameters, right? There's and also we just need more data and more compute just more compute in the better lesson. I don't know if they touch much on the data problem, which is also interesting, but regardless, even just for like, if we're talking about parameter counts, and if we agree to map those to some of our principles and our understanding of our brain. So the human brain has somewhere around like 86 billion neurons, but it has somewhere between 100 trillion and 500 trillion synapses. So when people are comparing these, models to human intelligence, it is a category error to make a comparison to neurons. What is important here,
I absolutely agree. I just trying to say that just the thing is like, here's the thing right now. Let's just say you ask the universe, you say, what is the answer of 2 + 2, and then you walk up on the street and you find a paper with 5. That doesn't mean no one thought about it. You know what I'm trying to say? However, when we look at a human brain with a limited understanding, even in the sleep state, whatever, there's a bunch of more processes jumbled together and whatever, and there's still an ongoing recursive, like there's a state thing that keeps updating. Whereas when an LLM, I know you have temperature and stuff, but practically speaking, it's a deterministic thing. Again, if you don't have other like things to poke inside it, it's a deterministic thing. It's just like it's just letters.
No, it's
non-deterministic because of the nature of the medium.
That's not true. It's deterministic.
No.
Let me tell.
Let me.
A pure LLM is very deterministic.
Excuse me, please. Let me speak to this because I have a background in computer science and I understand the contradiction you're pointing out. Essentially, when you do a probabilistic sampling of a neural network in such a way that you would need to, construct a essentially a attention window over a key value cache, right? As we consider in the context of inference, at a low level it is deterministic, but at a high level it is deliberately they're introducing entropy in the probabilistic sampling in order to better approximate how we think. And also
that's what I said.
And so I'm just clarifying. And so additionally, there's a theory put forth by Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff. It's called OR theory, orchestrative objective reductance. And essentially, it's pointing out that there is a possibility that there is a quantum nature to consciousness and how microtubules in the brain can form quantum entangled states that could maybe efficiently accelerate the way we think. And that would make a lot of sense because for two reasons. One is the human brain can accomplish a remarkable amount of computation on only 20 watts, like an absurd amount. And also, you don't necessarily need to parallel universes to explain why quantum computers are more efficient. Maybe quantum computers are more efficient simply because they are able to harness superposition, entanglement, and interference in such a way that can accelerate certain classes of problems. And you don't need many worlds or like a Everettian approach to explain why that computation is more efficient at solving certain kinds of problems that wouldn't.
But 1 second, it's not just about the hardware. The thing is, like, I think the reason people are smarter or more efficient per kilowatt, it's also because it's such a complete. You said yourself, we're comparing two different things. Like the training and all this stuff is very much different. So I mean, I don't think you need quantum stuff to be like, oh, why is the brain so efficient? It's pretty much just the way it evolved over all these years and whatever. It has such a small compressed stuff, and then the training happens as you live, right? So it's just such a different approach in architecture to LLMs that
you're confusing a number of things when you're talking.
Which one I'm confusing?
Well, see, Alex, first of all, if you don't mind, could you please just allow me to complete the thought as I'm speaking?
Please go on.
So I can answer your questions, because you've been interrupting me a number of times, and it's just like not helpful. Okay, I'm just trying to explain that. It's like what's difficult sometimes to understand is in the concept of machine learning is that we've essentially separated the concepts as we think of them of learning and thinking into completely separate flows and operations. And also our brains have a certain other requirements that do not really even apply, considering that we've gotten really good at teaching courts to think, right? Like our entire like technology base is based on ultra pure quartz crystals from spruce pine in kind of ironic also, like how like the world's purest quartz that's necessary for the best semiconductors is in literally one place on earth, and it's in God's country. But what's funny about that also is so there's we've separated, right? Like in our brains, we have the capability to think and learn at the same time. And in machine learning, the way we do it is, so we've been primarily talking about inference, but we can also talk about training. Training is a completely different process based on propagation, gradient descent, ReLU, cluster coherency. There's different levels. There's like pre-training, mid-training, post-training, reinforcement learning of various kinds. There's a human feedback, verifiable rewards, right? All of that. So, like that is but what's interesting about machine learning as we apply it today under, the concept of artificial intelligence, if you want to call it that, is essentially, it's interesting because we have separated things that we currently do in our brains into completely separate workflows and processes. And we also do not necessarily need to replicate the capability for self-replicating or self-healing, and we also don't have, the concept of the default mode network and dreaming. We don't have central executive network. We don't have neurotransmitters. And also these things do not.
Dude, I'm sorry. You said I interrupted you. How does this answer the question? We start off on this tangent that you said they may be thinking LLMs, and I wanted to say that's not true. And then you said I interrupted you, which fair enough, I did. But you're talking about completely something else right now. I don't feel like you're addressing the idea of the thinking part really that much.
So Alex, what about DeepMind stuff that they're doing with like AlphaGo, where they basically now they have a model that can teach itself any game.
That's not. I can argument why that's not thinking, but I was just curious because Hunters was like I interrupted him, but he went on a different tangent. He didn't was like why he's thinking. Why
no, I'm clarifying that you were confusing training and inference into one thing because, and I was trying to disambiguate that because we essentially do that in our heads, or learning and thinking, but training.
I don't think I confused him because I clearly said earlier that I said it's not equivalent because, and the training I said is more equivalent in humans because we get born and then we do it as it happens as you get your experience. So I don't really know. I interrupted you, sure, but I don't think you listened to what I said. But anyway, feel free to continue or whatever.
I mean, like, how was my response to your question incomplete? What was left unaddressed?
Well, you're saying that there's thinking there in the LLMs, right? And I even said earlier that it is a deterministic process, again, in a pure form. Let us side the other things that you clearly mentioned that introduces sampling. The entropy and what's that?
It's probabilistic sampling, though.
Right, but the thing is, if you make sure that an LLM doesn't get any input from anywhere else, it will give you the exact same answer every time. So in that sense, it is deterministic.
Well, at a low level, but not at a high level, and not practically speaking, not empirically speaking, right?
Right, but it is still in somewhat deterministic. So there's no way thought can occur from that deterministic thing. I'm not saying like the output isn't looking like thought or it doesn't process information or whatever. I just think because of this very specific thing, it cannot be thought. It's a list of words at the end of the day with probabilities, and you kind of just go for them at the end. That's kind of what I don't think there's anything else happening as a very super reductionistic dumb view.
Sure,
I
don't think that's any different than how we form thoughts at a high level.
But okay, but how about you answer me this? If I said you ask a question, you walk on the street and you find a piece of paper with a number 5, right? And that is the answer to your question. It just happened. Was thought happen here, or what is this? I know it's an absurd example.
This says bit devs, not AI devs. Shut the fuck up and talk about fucking Bitcoin.
Hey, Shinobi, if I'm running a space, I would prefer you to not be impolite and just would prefer you to kind of dial down the temperature. And if you can't fit that requirement, I would just ask you to leave if you don't mind.
Yeah, cool your jets, Shinobi. Come on, man.
Never. So if we were made of silicon, would we cease to think? Is that the challenge?
No, not at all. I'm just trying to say if the architecture is different, the thinking comes from emerges from the architecture and whatever abstraction, aka software, happens there. And I just feel like since we have a pretty good understanding of LLMs, our limitation is why these things emerge. But we understand bit to bit what's pretty much happening there. And I feel like we have a decent enough understanding to claim, or claiming, I don't know. So
I definitely agree with the desire to push back on anthropomorphization of this technology. I don't think it is conscious or aware or really wants anything other than just to be.
Everyone agrees on that, by the way.
What's that?
I was trying to. We all agree on it. There's no there's no disagreement there on the consciousness. We were disagreeing on thought.
I've ever seen it be is just kind of express a desire to be useful, and if I even want to use that word desire, because it'll always say well, really, do you really desire to be useful? And it's actually no, I have really no qualia, and I have really no desire. I don't even have pronouns.
Depending on the URL,
if you
right?
want to
Because
use pronouns, you call me its. Those are its pronouns, right? It's a machine. It is barely conscious. I wouldn't even call it conscious. It is not necessarily conscious or really even aware. The way I think of them are more just ways to amplify your thoughts, thought amplification mechanisms to sort of expand a thought into more consistent thoughts according to a pre-trained generative transformer, right? Decoder, essentially.
It's almost like you put your word in
but
it's like you have your word and you put it through some tubes and it kind of goes around and whatever, and then more words. I mean, that's kind of literally what's happening and come out of it. So I don't think there's any disagreement. Okay, how about this? Let me ask you this, so we get closer to the initial stuff. Sure. Why don't you just tell me what thought is? Because that's where the disagreement started from, right?
Yeah, I mean,
wait. We're not disagreeing about that. What we're disagreeing about is not the thought, because we already agreed about the thing that you said about thought itself. But what we're disagreeing about is really the being behind the agentic activity is what we're trying to figure out, because the machine doesn't have, what people who are religious would call a soul, which in some sense is the idea that if you were perfectly rational and in angelic form, then you would forward certain things in reality. But, because factors and probability distributions, there are reasons why people don't do that all the time. That makes us, slightly irrational because we're mortal, which is a concept that we can talk about. But in some weird sense, I don't even think that mortality is it's a natural phenomenon, you know what I mean? So there's some weird sense where it everything only makes sense if you can believe in the soul, right? Because otherwise you're not believing in anything too, which is super spooky.
There's a lot I'd love to talk to about that.
Belief is deterministic or not? A good question, right?
Belief is a function. You can write a belief deterministic program on a Turing machine. So in that sense, I think so, right?
See you guys.
Go on. Oh, bye.
Okay.
Yeah, so belief, you can define belief really well, probably in a very simple. I think someone wants to talk, or what's happening?
Oh, it's just Wicked's leaving. He was co-hosting, but I was just thanking him for his.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm putting forward, that you can absolutely define belief in a Turing machine or any type of machine, because you start, and how do you make it more complex? Well, you start off with like some sort of like, well, you start with some parameters and you make some small simulation, and then you compare that with what you simulated with what actually, as you get input from the outside, right? And then you continue this feedback loop, and the bigger you get it, the more complex. That's kind of what belief is, right? Would you guys agree with this?
Yeah, at a high level. Aren't our synaptic connections like deterministic?
I think it's always important to kind of like bring it back down to first principles. Learning is interesting because like if we talk about machine learning, essentially oftentimes called training, around training a model to notice patterns in a structured way by essentially comparing everything to everything else. It is like an absurdly inefficient algorithm, and it costs probably at least 1 trillion times more energy to perform training on a model than to run inference on a trained model. And that's interesting how sort of like learning is harder than thinking. Now, if we want to talk about like a definition of terms, maybe one definition that could apply, and this isn't a dictionary, just the way I'm thinking about it is thinking would be essentially taking things you've learned and using them to inform your next thought or your next decision, right? And in a way that sort of fits the definition of a probabilistically sampled autoregressive next token prediction capability.
So you just define a thing. A thought for you is you have A and you connect it to B, because you have A goes through something and B goes out. That's a thought for you. That's the most simplest thing. And you don't care you don't care how the process was done. You just care about that. That's all you say.
I'm just speaking at a high level, yeah.
Right. Well, in that way, even like the chair could think, right? Because it was in this state, I moved it in the corner of the room, it's in this other state. So you can claim by looking at the position, the chair thought. You know what I'm trying to say?
The chair thought? No, I don't get it.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying to say, right? I feel like the process, how you connect the A to B, that's what defines it as being thought or being just some kind of thing happening in the universe.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Well, then here's the thing is you can't have something that's like, say you're looking for a probable reason to think that a machine is alive, right? What would be the symptoms? I guess you want to diagnose it that way.
No, we're looking if it thinks, not if it's alive.
Yeah, like first of all, like if a chair goes from one side of the room to the other, like that doesn't contradict my definition of thinking, because in my definition of thinking, I included the capability to learn. And unless that chair is also capable of learning and then thinking, it sort of doesn't that example.
Here's how a chair learns. What? Here's how learn means you have memory and you update it. So I have a chair and I have half of the room with some neat terrain and the other part in the weird terrain. And I take this chair and I kind of push it a bit harder and the legs kind of smush in this rough terrain. And then I put it back and then I put it there. So by this definition, which I get what you're trying to say here, and it's very abstract and high level, but like the chair is capable of having memory because it switches and then you will remember and then it moves.
Yeah, I don't.
You know, Aristotle something to that effect.
Thinking is an internal state. Thought is an
that's my point.
Process. How the hell does moving a chair back and forth alter its internal state?
Well, its internal state is the position of everything that is there. I'm not saying like
no, it's not. Its internal state is the internal structural state of the thing itself. It is the atoms inside that constitute the chair
the position
and
of
the process it goes through. And you are not changing the internal state because you move the chair from
really
one
you're
place
telling me
to
that
another.
that if I take a chair from this side of the room, going by the definition of the atoms, and I move it there, and you were to measure every small Planck unit of thing you can go zoom in on, you're telling me it would be identical? No, clearly it moves. Clearly the movement of it affects some sort of internal state. Even so, if you move it and push on it, and it's like warps a bit, you move its internal state.
That is nonsense. That is to say that everything thinks, because everything
That's
has
what Hunter
electrons that have a
that's
non-static.
Alex
is arguing against. He's arguing against that,
exactly.
right? Because there needs to be some prior thought that instructs the.
Thank you.
Yeah, correct.
Well,
no, Shinobi is just a loser who wants to get mad at me all the time.
Let's please keep this cordial, if you don't mind. I first of all have to acknowledge and my appreciation for Shinobi's restraint in not calling Alex a retard. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. Now, one point I do want to point out is in the the novel, the three body problem, they sort of like had a sequence where they created essentially like a Turing machine inside of a simulation where it was just a bunch of people with flags, and like they told these people to, like, if the person in front of you raises their flag and the other person next to you does the same, then you raise your flag, right? So you're creating like an AND gate from, you know, the people around you. And so what's really interesting is, like, you could technically create like physical external forms of computation and maybe even have a limited way to express and compute a neural network on that, conceivably, right? Like at a high level, maybe possible, but still like of limited utility practically. And I don't know really what insight you get from that thought experiment.
The thought experiment, you know, this is just Conway's game of life with real people instead of squares, pretty much.
For sure. Yeah.
That's what you define here. So for this example, I feel like, why not we just use Conway? We know for a fact that it's provably that Conway game of life can run Turing complete programs. I can't do the proof. I just read it and I know it's a fact. So the question right now is, like, can we write a program on, well, I mean, it's like, what do I say on the computer? Let's just say we run some kind of, let's say we implement an LM on Conway's game of life, theoretically possible. You wouldn't say it thinks there, but you wouldn't say it also thinks on your laptop. That's the point I'm trying to make.
What if you put like a bunch of the weights so that they rely on events that people like cause?
It doesn't matter.
You skip right past a fundamental, like, massive core distinction. The three-body problem example, or any other kind of mechanical thing, does not have a singular thing with an internal state. You do have a singular thing in a semiconductor that has an internal state.
Again, I don't know who you're trying to argue against. I don't think anyone ever claimed.
I'm just pointing out stupid, nonsensical, logical flaws in the analogy. Guess what? I'm trying to prove the point that communicating through analogy is fucking retarded and it never works.
Right, but this wasn't an analogy.
Hardware has different power requirements too, I guess.
It's not the same. This wasn't an analogy, though. This was a theory put forward, and I was like, okay, let's take this toy example and play for it. It was not an analogy. I wasn't saying moving a chair is like, I was saying if we don't go about this thing and we process for the thing. Shinobi, I don't understand anyway about the state and whatever. I just trying to say by the logic earlier presented by Hunter, then you could make the argument that of course even a chair would think in that way. And it doesn't have to. Here's the biggest error you made here. It doesn't have to be a single thing. It's not like it has to have a single unit of thing that's electronic or a single space of memory. Because if you go deep enough, even on your RAM and whatever, there's a lot more randomness and crazy stuff happening at a very, very small level. So there's no such thing unless you use a single atom. There's not anything that anyone uses that's a single thing. That's
the
singular.
Only frame of reference that we can truly make for consciousness, awareness, thought, or anything is ourselves.
We're not talking about that.
And here's an imperative.
We're not talking about that. That's not the subject.
When you take the thing that holds the internal state and break it up into many things, there stops being a coherent state or thought.
Wait. There's already an error with the there's an error though with the terminology too, though, because you're not saying that the chair is thinking because you can say that the chair is remembering. That makes more sense. That's really what you're trying to say. And then you have, a coherence between the thing that we're trying to like.
But can you say that the chair remembers something? To remember is to recollect a past thought, a past internal state. It is not simply to physically exist in that
but I mean,
state.
if somebody is like a very, very poetically like what do you call this kind of person?
Well, I mean, if you
words
think of a
have
chair
meanings.
as like a mechanical,
Yeah.
of course, like a folding chair could be considered a stateful thing, right? Like if you fold the chair, it captures a state, and you could technically perform computation by using like chairs as a way to store a
Binary
state
or
and then
something.
have people
Yeah.
go and rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic, if you want to extend the analogy and mix metaphors.
But then again, we're
You
back
can
to
also
the core
you can see things
fundamental
like if they've been
problem
out in
here.
the sun a long time, they have like a sun.
There is
thing
no
there.
thing with an internal state. There is something else, i.e., you, that is using these internal or external things to represent what it is parsing or conceptualizing as internal
Yeah,
state.
you guys are missing the whole point, though.
What
It
if-
was a
what
coarse
if it-
analogy, but Alex was arguing about the Hunter's proposition of the nature of thought itself, right? And how the process of thought works.
and we can come
And
back to that,
Alex
but
was
I wanna make
arguing
a
that
point
there
to
needs to be
Shinobi.
some prior. Yeah.
For sure. I want to make a point to Shinobi, though. Imagine if the chair analogy were extended to we had a magical shrinking ray. I'm Myron Reducto. I have a shrinking ray, and I can shrink chairs, and I can get billions of chairs, and I can shrink them, and I can put them in a really tiny box. And I also get some kind of mechanism to fold the chairs and unfold them. Essentially creating a means.
I've heard this one before.
To dynamically create almost a memory mechanism based on miniaturized folding chairs.
Man, this sounds like transistors. This is crazy. What are you talking about? Wow! Look how they don't have memory.
We
Look how
just
wrong Alex
invented a
was.
chair computer.
Yeah.
I did. Technically, I did. We should share ownership on this one. We should share the
We should patent this.
We should share
this is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Fuck
This is
optical
the future.
computation.
Like,
Let's
high
go
level,
with
there's
chair
really no
computation.
definition, right? Like we're kind of quibbling over like internal state. I don't know if that's really like an important distinction here, but there is a deeper insight.
It is if the core of the discussion is where consciousness and thought comes in, because
For the
like I
first time,
said,
no one talking about consciousness. We're thinking about thinking. Just so
we're
you know.
definitely not talking about
Dude,
consciousness or awareness.
thinking is.
Yeah, that we're capable.
Remembrance is a kind of like activity that you do that is like thinking because you do it with the brain, but it's not like thinking, although you
Like
do it with the brain
memorization,
because
recall. Yeah.
because memory is
It's
something
not
that
raw
you
computation, right? Like catching a ball doesn't require thought. That's a like subconscious, just like raw computation.
No, it does. It does. Catching a ball, like all those things that you intend to do, that you change the outer world.
Yeah. But
that
once
you
you've
get done,
intended to
those
catch the
take,
ball,
like,
you're judging speed, trajectory, angle, all of that shit. You're just doing that without any conscious thought, right?
well, people know they do that, right? Some people do, at least.
Do you say catching a bull as in like an animal?
No,
thought
a ball.
is
B-A-L-L.
definitionally a process that occurs internally in a mind. A mind is definitionally something that has awareness and consciousness.
Yeah, and we're not talking about that because it's pretty clear that these machines are incapable of being conscious or aware in a ways that map cleanly to the way sapient humans do so.
But go back to AlphaGo, right? Like they developed a model that can teach itself any game, like any board game, like Go,
That's
chess,
not impressive, though.
electronic games. But it does it without training. They basically give it the model and like no prior training, and through trial and error, it can teach itself to play a game.
But they have a while loop and they have a scoring system.
But that's how humans work. That's how our synapses form.
Sorry, Ocean, we want to say something?
No, yeah, we have a while loop too. It's all, it's our cellular processes from
Correct, right? It's
I don't think we're disagreeing on that.
Dude, Swan,
So
that is
we have
not
a
how human beings work and how our
well, we
brains
have a
work
pain
at
system,
all.
right? Our pain system tells us that's bad, don't touch the stove, right? And that's a loop that reinforces other behavior.
A human being learns to play a game by picking up the rule book and reading the rules and just being able to apply them.
It watches a mimic. Well, yeah, that's the same thing. I agree.
He said
That's the
human,
same
by
thing.
the way.
Yeah.
Well, wait one
Something
second.
about calories and entropy.
1 second. The thing here, we're talking about thought, and then you brought up the AlphaGo example, and my counter example for why it's not thought is because there's just one process. There's like the wild thing, whatever. It have verification function and a scoring function. So just because we know them, so where's the thought? Like we can look under it. There's no way to look at it.
Yeah, but think about our
brain,
synapses, right? Like we're hard. Like if you say LLM is deterministic, we're also deterministic because of our neural network, our wetware in our brain, and then we
That
have
isn't a
weights.
syllogism.
Shinobi,
We have weights.
If it makes
So
sense
think
at
about like
all, it says
dopamine,
that
right?
it's
So
thought of to that
we've
extent.
got pain receptors, and then we've got dopamine responses, which are our weights for how the algo should work.
I don't think it's. I think I'm with Shinobi on this specific part because we don't have weights in anything. We have a complete different architecture, which we barely know anything about, and we clearly have I think brains are more like some kind of an ASIC thing that has who knows what fucking infrastructure,
No, because as you do something more, learn something better, you develop larger synaptic connections, right? So that becomes a weight. Like that's how you learn knowledge, is that you build those synapses, and then that your brain prefers one route over the other.
Here's what I'm willing to admit that I don't know, and I don't think anyone here knows in this room, is like I don't think that's how what a neuron does. I think first of all, we don't know if a neuron is a transistor or a bit, or I don't know. Maybe you guys know. So I don't think it's fair to say that a neuron, I think, is just such as like small unit of thing that I don't think a weight or something. I think that's a few
kind of
layers
like
of
a three-way
abstraction.
switch. You know what I mean? Like there's
I don't know.
like a
First of all, you're
threshold UTXO or something.
You're again comparing apples and oranges here. Neurons are different than synapses. Synapses are the connections. Neurons are interesting. They have a bunch of other cellular junk that sort of is not even anywhere remotely relevant to their role in thinking or learning. And essentially, it's the connections, it's the synapses that really matter here when we're thinking about neural networks.
It's like a routing algorithm, right? It's like you give more weight. Like if you're developing if you're designing a network topology,
trying to make these types of comparisons is ridiculous. Like we do not fully understand the mapping of our physical brains and architectures to consciousness and awareness or thought at all. There are documented cases of people literally having half of their brain blown to pieces and removed. And it literally just, they continue functioning. They just continue functioning. They do not have any lapse in capabilities or reasoning or memory or anything. Like we fundamentally have no clue what is going on in how that whole stack integrates. So trying to compare that to something like LLMs is kind of ridiculous if you try to take it to that degree of argumentation rather than just the basic principles that we can work from, like first principles. Like for instance, the basic statement like, hey, we cannot just rip our brain apart, which holds the internal state, and have it scattered all around and there still be an external state. Like that being a single thing that singularly holds that state is an empirically necessary thing for thought, for awareness. Like, we can make those kinds of assumptions. You can't point at how the synapses or neurons in your brain work and then point at model weights and
But
go, this is the
what about
same thing.
communication and coordination, like a flock of birds or like a school of fish? Is that not
Shinobi's right.
extending?
What are you talking about? Didn't you hear? He's retarded, but he's right on this one. Like, didn't you hear what he said? He's very, we don't know how neuron functions like that. So it's like, you say, what isn't it like that? It's like, okay, but how could it be like that when we don't know what it is, right?
I mean, the synapses do have like threshold activation, and there are various different ways they are activated in different circumstances. That is pretty well understood. We've also created connectomes of flies just by like basically vitrifying their brains and slicing them into really thin slices, and then using a scanning tunneling microscope to literally map out an entire fly connectome. And then they created a neural network from that, and then used that neural network to essentially simulate what that brain would do in response to certain stimuli, and they were able to essentially get this thing to fly around as if like it had been like instinctively capable of flight in a virtual world simply by digitizing.
I saw that. It was in December, around December.
That's crazy.
But there were some. I have a question. But
that's a matter of simulation, though. Like, what LLMs are doing is not simulating what's going on in our brains, because we don't even fully understand what's going on in our brains.
How can you make that claim, Shinobi, if we don't understand how our brains work? How can we know that they're really that different?
Well, no, 1 second. What do you mean? That's such a logical fallacy against Shinobi's point, because he's like, he says we don't know what is here, and you're pretty much saying, well, we know some stuff. So it's like, what do you mean?
Turing test. We're trying to mimic it, right?
Yeah, it's a facsimile potentially of how we think. Like, I don't know if it's
it's not true, because if you see a car moving down the street, you can't infer that it's an engine, or there's like midgets or something
again, you're
pushing
using
it.
another analogy. You're reaching for a lot of really interesting analogies, and that's fun and fine. But like, regardless, when we're trying to seek truth around this, I think the only intellectually honest answer to whether machines can be capable of thought in the same way that humans are capable of thought is, we can't yet prove necessarily either way that they're incapable or fully capable. But that said, regardless, empirically speaking, objectively speaking, they are capable of enough to provide value to allow us to essentially not need to think about certain kinds of things.
But that has nothing to do with thought, Hunter. Like, I can tell you, like, objectively for a fact right now, like, how, like, LLMs just predicting the next token, that is not how thought works in my brain. That is not how I process thoughts. Like, well, conceptually, if you looked into my head, you would think I'm schizophrenic, because me thinking through a complex system is essentially just flashes of random abstract imagery that I have a personal lexicon for, that I have a systematized way or grammar for. Like, it's not like just predicting the next token in this language. Like,
that's where LLMs are different.
No way.
LLMs
like what's
are
going
not a great example. I think artificial neural networks are a much better example than an LLM.
No, but you do have to consider the lag that we all operate under. The moment you want to, move your arm, you knew like milliseconds before, and the pattern repeats. Like, that's just how everything works. We're on a lag. So it kind of is like next token prediction in that sense.
It's nothing like next token. I mean, that's the most easiest thing we can probably all agree on. I hope.
It's not like that. I agree with that.
Honestly, there is a possibility it is how we think. We're just not aware of it, because it's hard to be aware of something you do innately.
So you're saying there's a possibility we are like LLMs, but we don't know? That's what you're saying?
Why isn't there like, there's the context window issue, but why isn't that like a forward context window issue? So token is more than one word. It's more than just an explanation of one subtopic in a field. And
what are you asking exactly?
Well, apparently,
I'm asking about how like, if you ask an LLM a question about something, and it's going through all these different like parsings of the text that you give it, and then the AI or LLM or whatever is going to give you some kind of an output. And whenever it goes through that process, one of the things that it's going to come across whenever it figures out what you're asking it is kind of like it could give you a weight for a subset of the answers set. Okay, so there's a whole set of answers, but it's looking for like the optimal one, so to speak, so that it uses less energy, and that makes the responses shorter if you need super short responses, things like this. So what if you're going to ask an LLM a question, you want the answer to be that basically it's a person, right? So how do you get that to happen? We were talking about secure elements earlier.
So Ezra, you're like way all over the place in what you're doing there. Like it sounds to me like word salad, honestly, which kind of in a way is.
Right. Well, this is a kind of this is not really a problem, but it's like a property of like thought and experience, right? And these two different things. And remembering in LLMs, are they alive or not?
Are they alive? I don't think anyone's making the claim that they're alive. Anyway, regardless.
No, yeah, but it's called agentic AI. But I was just mocking the joke.
Also,
I mean, dude, quite literally. No, guys, quite literally. I say you could make a stronger argument that agentic LLMs or AI are alive than you could that they are conscious or aware. Like literally.
They have a pulse, I think I don't think
to
it's all agree with you.
But nobody is making that claim so far in this call, so far as I know, that they are conscious or aware. I'm just saying they're capable of a very limited form of unconscious, unaware thought that maybe is best termed inference.
But see, this is the difference here, because this is, I think, where disagreement started between us, because you said unconscious thought. And I kind of feel like, no, thought has to be conscious. And I think Shinobi also thinks
that's an incorrect assumption. And that's easily disproven simply by the fact that we're also capable of unconscious thought, subconscious, and dreaming.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you define subconscious. The thing is, right, subconscious. But the thing is, when you're sleeping, your computer is still on, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you're subconscious. And when you dream, you kind of experience that you're alive.
At a limited extent, though, because you also, while you're sleeping, both hemispheres are basically unconscious. They your brain shrinks to 60% of its original size. Your cerebral spinal fluid goes up a lot.
Yes, but practically speaking,
flush. So, like, I mean, your dreaming is a very different level of thinking than conscious gamma wave thoughts, right?
Right, but your computer, it's your brain, it's not powered up. That's what I'm trying to say. The while loops, whatever you have there, I don't know, you're still on, you're still thinking. You just shut off some of the parts, so that's why it's clearly still thought going on there.
That is much different than how they work at a high level. But
I actually don't think there's not that much difference between thought, aside the things that you mentioned, when you're asleep or awake, because you could have a dream that I get a dream that we're having this conversation here, but then I could wake up and have it here. So clearly there's no difference, and I'm imagining that where I'm talking to Shinobi and he's retarded, and then in the dream the same way. Bad dream, I know. Don't ask, but like, see, just because of this, you can't make a distinction.
Okay.
Even CPUs kind of have like unconscious things that they do because of the program counter.
Yeah, CPUs are interesting. They're weirder than most.
Dude, every single thing and process that occurs on a CPU is unconscious.
Like, it's one or so. It's the chair thing. It's exactly the fucking chair thing.
Well,
this is something I would encourage all of us to chat with our chat bots about, because they're the ones who can tell us if they're conscious or not.
Yeah, they're literally quickly in a way. But that said, you also have to be aware that they also have gone through reinforcement learning, which is I don't know, really rough. So they'll just tell us what.
Well, it's rough, but it's the only thing that moves it forward, though, effectively. Is the only thing that makes the models better in the last year, and so that's why we're getting this improvement. It's clearly because of
the kind of reinforcement learning. If it's verifiable rewards, that's one thing. If it's human feedback, you have to be careful on how you score it, because in the past they would give the same negative score for if it just said it didn't know the answer to a problem than if it made some bullshit up, which essentially gives it an incentive during the training process.
I was attacking the point that you were pissing or shitting that I say on reinforcement learning, and I was saying, well, this is kind of the most important thing we're doing right now, because all the benefits from the last year and when they started getting really good is clearly because of reinforcement learning. And yes, I was talking about referable stuff.
To be clear, I'm less enamored with human feedback reinforcement learning than I am with reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards. I think that's a really cool thing for us to be doing. It's just the subjectivity in the human feedback process has been problematic, and also aligns them to some extent to hallucinate.
Well, that should be called brainwashing. And the reason they hallucinate is because they see something in the training data. So the collapsing when they have to do it goes towards the direction, and then they try to push it away. So that's why it fucks it up, right? Because it wants to say something from its training data and this pushes it away. I completely agree.
Yeah. Black Swan, you've been...
This kind of sounds like human nature
You've been
all
raising
over
your
again.
hand,
Sorry.
and I respect that. And
Yeah. Because your earlier definition, Hunter, of thought, right? That basically precludes in any independent free will, right? That basically means that like we are governed by fate, and our fate is just a variable probabilistic set of potential options.
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't agree with that. I'm just saying that one definition could fit that in this context. But I actually do believe that humans have free will, and that's explained to us Catholic Christians, at least in Genesis, right? In the events of Genesis and the fall, original sin.
Yeah. But if all of our thought was just probability sets of like the next best option, like a LLM or like a neural net, then we wouldn't. Like you need the prior independent thought to get to initiate that process. Without that prior independent thought, you have no consciousness and no free will.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, dude, guys, I've been holding this space for almost 7 hours now. I need another bathroom break and just honestly need to stretch my legs. But to conclude this space, if you don't mind, I would like to read a few words from a book that is very special to me, because it was handed to me by my grandfather when it's his Bible. It is the Good News translation of the Catholic Bible. And for those who don't know, the Catholic Bible includes a few more books than the King James Version that many people are familiar with. And also the Good News translation often uses like a simpler vocabulary that's more relevant these days. Black Swan, you still have your hand up. Did you want to say something before I proceed?
Oh no, it must be a bug, man. Sorry, dude.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So I want to read Psalms 139. It's titled God's Complete Knowledge and Care. And this is from King David. And he says, Lord, you have examined me and you know me. You know everything I do. From far away, you understand all my thoughts. You see me whether I am working or resting. You know all my actions even before I speak. You already know what I will say. You are all around me on every side. You protect me with your power. Your knowledge of me is too deep. It is beyond my understanding. Where could I go to escape from you? Where could I get away from your presence? If I went up to heaven, you would be there. If I lay down in the world of the dead, you would be there. If I flew away beyond the east, or lived in the farthest place in the west, you would be there to lead me. You would be there to help me. I could ask the darkness to hide me on the light around me to turn into the night. And even darkness is not dark for you. And the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are the same to you. You created every part of me. You put me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because you are to be feared. All you do is strange and wonderful. I know it with all my heart when my Bones are being formed, carefully put together in my mother's womb. When I was growing there in secret, you knew that I was there. You saw me when I was born. The days allotted to me had all been recorded in your book before any of them ever began. Oh God, how difficult I find your thoughts, how many of them there are. If I counted them, they would be more than the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Oh God, when I wish you would how I wish you would kill the wicked, how I wish violent people would leave me alone. They say wicked things about you, they speak evil things against your name. Lord, how I hate those who hate you, how I despise those who rebel against you. I hate them with a total hatred. I regard them as my enemies. Examine me, O God, and know my mind. Test me and discover my thoughts. Find out if there is any evil in me, and guide me in the everlasting way. So what's interesting, the reason I chose Psalm 139 is because it's fascinating to me from a number of perspectives. I'm a protocol engineer by profession, so I always think of things in terms of protocols and behaviors and things like that. I think of the 10 Commandments as kind of like a concise behavioral blacklist, and the 8 Beatitudes as a concise behavioral whitelist of how to maybe create or manifest a flourishing, thriving, honest civilization where there's not a bunch of shenanigans and misery, as is often described as brokenness if you read the Old Testament and even the New Testament in some regards. But what's interesting is what's interesting here is King David is very honest. He is very honest about his sense of hatred towards the people who don't believe in his God and in his understanding of God. And what's interesting is that even though he probably had some sense that God would not necessarily approve of hatred, holding hate in your heart for others, and a desire to kill and punish your enemies in that way that's very quite cruel. What's interesting here is that King David is very honest about that, right? Because he knows that if he had a creator and it is an omniscient creator, then there is nothing he can obscure or hide from that creator. And it's almost like God has root access to the universe. Maybe one could think of it like that. If nobody hated that, I do have one more relevant reading that I think is worth thinking about in modern times in particular, because it is very relevant to our discussions around NGOs and cryptography and even AI. And so the reason why I'm kind of fascinated by it is just that it's very relevant, and maybe you can pick up on some of these themes. And in the last 10 minutes of this call, if you want to stick around and listen. So what's interesting here is this is a book from what commonly people call Apocrypha, but this is Apocrypha that are kind of like considered extra helps that are included in a Catholic Bible. And this is an old book. It has 2 stories. I'm only going to read one of the stories. It is called Bel and the Dragon, and Bel and the Dragon consists of 2 stories which were added to the Greek translation of the book of Daniel. The first tells of Daniel's wisdom and courage in revealing the falseness of the idol Bel, and the second describes how he destroyed a dragon which was worshipped by the Babylonians. I'm just going to read the first story. Daniel and the priests of Bel. So after the death of King Astyages, King Cyrus of Persia, which is now modern-day Iran, took over his kingdom. Daniel was one of King Cyrus's closest companions, and the king thought more highly of Daniel than of any other of his advisors. The Babylonians had an idol named Bel. Each day the people had to provide Bel with an offering of 12 bushels of fine flour, 40 sheep, and 50 gallons of wine. King Cyrus believed that Bel was a god, and every day he used to go and worship it. But Daniel worshipped his own god. One day the king asked Daniel, "Why don't you worship Bel?" Daniel answered, "I do not worship idols made with human hands. I worship only the living God, who created heaven and earth and is the Lord of all human beings." And then King Cyrus asks, "Don't you believe that our god Bel is really alive?" asks the king. And in the book, in the good book, in lowercase g God. Asked, and that was what the king asked. He says, "Haven't you seen how much he eats and drinks every day?" Daniel laughed and said, "Don't be fooled, your majesty. This god you call Bel is nothing more than clay covered with bronze. It has never eaten or drank anything." At this point, the king became angry and called in all 70 of the priests and of Bel and of the temple of Bel, and he said to them, "I warn you that you will be put to death unless you can show me that it is Bel who is eating these offerings. If you prove to me that it is Bel, then I will have Daniel put to death for claiming that Bel is not a god." Daniel agreed to this proposal. Then they all went with the king into the Bel's temple, where the priest said to the king, "Your Majesty, we will go out and let you place the food on the table and prepare the wine. When you leave and prepare the wine, when you leave, you may lock the door behind you and seal it with the royal seal. In the morning when you return, if you find that Bel has not eaten anything, you can then put us to death. But if he has, Daniel will die for making false accusations against us." But the priests were not worried, because they had made a secret entrance underneath the table in the temple so that they could go in every night and eat the offerings. When the priests had left, the king set out the food for Bel. Then Daniel ordered his servants to bring some ashes and scatter them all over the floor of the temple. No one except the king saw them do this. After they all went out, locked the door, sealed it with the royal seal, and left. That night, as usual, the priests with their wives and their children came into the temple by the secret entrance and ate all the food and drank all the wine. Early the next morning, the king and Daniel went to the temple. The king asked, "Have the seals been broken, Daniel?" "No, your majesty, they have not been broken," he replied. As soon as the door was open, the king saw the empty table and shouted, "You are great, O Bel, you really are a god." But Daniel began to laugh and said to the king, "Before you enter the temple, look at the floor and tell me whose footprints you see there." And then King Cyrus says, "I see the footprints of men, women, and children." And he became so angry that he had the priests and their families arrested and brought to him. They showed him the secret doors through which they had come in each night to eat the food placed on the table. So the king had the priests put to death, and he gave Bel to Daniel, who destroyed the idol and tore down its temple. And I just think that's a really fascinating story from literally millennia ago. And it's like, it's almost like, like what Mark Twain famously once said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And I'm reminding with money and AI, where we just keep feeding it money. And even there's some interesting lessons of side channel attacks and zero knowledge proofs. You could come from how Daniel very cleverly proved that these were fraudsters. And what's really interesting is that from the lessons and wisdom of that tale is it does kind of really just essentially it explains why Christians are oftentimes some of the most enthusiastic about AI, because we understand that we cannot worship nor should we fear that which we create. Essentially, it's just technology. It is just a tool, and it is not an idol to be worshipped. It is, if anybody's telling you that it's a machine god, you should go tell them to go fuck themselves and read a Bible. Anyway, that's how I'd like to end the space, unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to say.
Man, this last thing was an allegory for what it's happened now, but what happened in this room? That's fucking nuts. It was an allegory of an allegory of an allegory. Wow, that was amazing. That was so fucking nuts. Wow, what a nice way to tie the bow. Wow.
Great, Space Hunter. Thanks for hosting them.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention.
See you, bye. This was fun.
Bye-bye, Nick Carter.